We're just waiting for Councillor Zelka. We'll just wait a few seconds. He may just be trying to get in. Eric cannot find the meeting Zoom details. I just got a note from him. Selena's taking action on that right now. It's inevitable, technical glitches. At least it's not me this time. I'm surrounded by staff. So, oh, he found something. Okay, he's probably on his way in. I'm waiting. He's waiting to get in. There he is. Good. Hi, Eric. Voila.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Eric. Nice to see you. Welcome, everybody. Mayor Murdoch is away this evening, and I'm chairing the meeting as acting mayor. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is in the traditional territory of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. So can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today's meeting? Move Councillor Patterson, second Councillor Green. Call the question. All in favor? Against? Thank you. So we need a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from the July 19th special meeting.
I'll move.
Move Councillor Patterson, second Councillor Zelka. Is there any discussion? Councillor Zelka.
Oh, thank you very much. Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Oh, thank you very much. I very much appreciate the minutes, and they're very, very clear. I did want to correct one possible misperception with respect to the notice of motion that was put forward on the last page. It characterizes it as being about the marina lease. I wanted to change the characterization to be the description to be a community engagement with respect to the marina lease. Those are the only words I wish to add. No other changes, please.
So could you just repeat that one more time, Councillor Zelka?
Sure. On the last page,
Yep.
where it says
actual
notice of motion regarding marina
Yep.
lease,
Yeah.
in between regarding and marina, insert the following words. And I have it right here. Community engagement related to the marina lease, well,
Okay.
marina lease process, actually, but that's fine.
Okay, so we've got an amendment. So you want to make a motion to make that amendment?
Yes,
Councillor
please.
Zelka? And can we have a seconder? So Councillor Patterson? Good. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And against? Okay, so that's moved. So
Thank
we'll
you.
go back to the original motion that was to approve the minutes. So I'll call the, is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Against? Okay, thank you. So we're now at Oh, I got to tick these off. We're now at the advisory receipt of committee meetings, 4.1. Can we have a seconder and mover to receive the minutes from the May 4th APC meeting? Move Councillor Green, seconded Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Against? Thank you very much. Okay, so the next section item is to release a resolution from the June 14th closed meeting. So I'll read that resolution for the record. There was a recommendation that the verbal update from Fire Chief Darren Hughes advising of the withdrawal of the Supreme Court petition initiated by Rebecca S. Miller challenging the district building and plumbing bylaw number 4247, 2005, as it relates to the property of 1561 York Street be received. Item 6, Mayor's remarks. I'm acting mayor, and really the only thing that I will say as acting mayor is because this is the last meeting before the summer break, just to really bring to the listeners and council's attention that this is the last meeting and that we will resume our next in person, hopefully.
Madam Chair, if I could just point of order, I think on that last, the part that you read out, the recommendation is that it be received. So
I
think
see.
technically
Okay,
we
thank
have to receive it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
I'll make the motion that
Okay,
that be
thank
received.
you. Okay, moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Zelka. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Oppose? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. And any other observations like that, please let me know, councillors. Yeah, so I was just back to Mayor's remarks, just mentioning that this is our last meeting and that we will resume person-to-person, hopefully, meetings in September. And I believe that meeting is September 20th, actually. So look forward to seeing everybody in the new council chambers. Councillor Green. Oh, you're on mute.
I won't miss this format, believe me. Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question. I understood it was September the 12th. So could someone confirm that meeting? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure about the date.
That's good.
Thank you.
Okay, let's check with staff. If somebody could clarify for us. Would I ask Selena? Would that work? Okay. What's it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you able to hear me? Wonderful. Yes, the meeting that would normally be held earlier in September wasn't scheduled with the annual schedule of meetings because of UBCM. So typically we cancel that during the week of UBCM. And in 2021, we just chose to not include it on the calendar, but to rather to leave it open to calling a special meeting if needed.
Thank you. Thank you, Selena. Okay, so we're under new business. In this item, we can call for public input. The first item we have on this part of the agenda is the Oak Bay Business Improvement Association related to music in the village. And I understand we have Ms. Leary with us tonight from the BIA who may wish to speak to the proposal that councillors have in their packet. So we're just waiting for Ms. Leary to hook up.
Good evening. Yes, I'm here.
Good. Hello, Ms. Leary.
Hello.
So I wonder if, would you like to just give an overview? The council has the letter, the proposal that you've written. Would you like to speak to it, or would you rather just field questions from the councillor?
Whatever you prefer. I'm happy to sort of speak to that. We've had a number of discussions in the community with businesses and others about our next sort of expansion with the BIA would be to be doing more sidewalk activations. We don't have any plans when we go back to our main events to add more road closures to the schedule, for example. So just how can we animate and continue to bring vibrancy to the village in ways that the public and the businesses can enjoy. Certainly, we've seen some vibrancy with patios and various things that have been going on street side. So this is, in a way, an extension of that philosophy. We know that the future of the patios is uncertain at this point for the long term, but it would be a way to just animate the streets and bring some vibrancy without any traffic or parking impacts.
Okay, thank you very much. So are there any questions from the council? Councillor Zelka?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. A question through you to staff. Assuming we move this motion, and I certainly think it's quite reasonable, and I certainly will be supporting it. But I did want to ask staff, with respect to the state of emergency that existed for a pandemic that then expired, and now we're back in state of emergency. In that whole process, I understand most if not all of our noise bylaws were already put aside by the province. I just wanted to ask whether we even need to do this, since or maybe, you know, on the other hand, the state of emergency may not actually extend all the way through the summer. So I take that back. No, we may as well move this in the first place. Thank you. I withdraw the question. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Now, there's Councillor Braithwaite and Councillor Patterson. I'm sorry, I didn't know who put their hand up first because there was some message covering you, but do you know, is it you, Councillor Patterson? Okay, and then Councillor Braithwaite.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And in principle, I support this. I think it's a good idea and will, I think will be appreciated. Just a couple of questions kind of about really how it's implemented. And that is, if some of the music is taking place on the weekend, who is responsible to assist or to supervise on the Saturday when perhaps our staff are not readily available, and also who would be responsible and what format might take report of how this new project is received by the community and just on a go forward basis. So just some small technicalities about what we can expect to look forward to in the future. Thank you.
So was that a question, Councillor Patterson, to staff? Is that who you were directing it to, or to Ms. Leary?
I think that it might come from staff, Madam Chair. I'm not sure. If not, then Ms. Leary can perhaps speak to it, but I would turn it over to staff first, because I think that the staff would be responsible for coordination and for the supervision and even reporting back to council. So I'm thinking staff, but perhaps it'll be a combination of both.
Okay, so let's get a response.
Chair Ney,
yeah.
If I could provide an answer to that. Sorry, I'm fighting with my hand there, but just to add some clarity, that this really is Business Improvement Association initiative. Staff won't have a role for overseeing or reporting back, but I'm sure Ms. Leary would welcome the invitation to return back on the success of the program. But staff doesn't really have a role in this other than bringing it forward for council's governance decision making to
Okay, thanks, Ms. Varela, for that clarity. So so back to you, Ms. Leary. Would you like to have a go at any of these the series of questions posed by Councillor Patterson?
Yes, so it is a pilot in the sense that we'll be looking at different locations. We would be looking at different musical styles. We would be responsible for deciding on a short list of locations, which I would be consulting with staff about the appropriateness. We'll be consulting with the business community on how they felt about different locations and those kinds of things, so that should the program move forward in future years, we'll have best case scenarios for each of the sections of the village. We'd like to see the music spread throughout the village, not just around, say, the town clock, so that we see benefits throughout Oak Bay Village and the various businesses can be exposed to the music. So that would be a responsibility that we would take on, starting small and growing it, much as we have with Light Up and Halloween and the market.
Okay.
So just
did you
if
want
I-
me to- Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yep.
if I might continue, Madam Chair. So thank you for that clarification, both from Ms. Varela and from Ms. Leary. And so, Ms. Leary, then I gather from the comments that you would be taking them, some of the information, knowledge, what you've learned back and presenting it to the Business Improvement Association. And so perhaps then I know we have 2 council members, I think maybe even 3 council members that serve on that association. And so if a report goes to them, then I believe they could bring back the information to council, or perhaps we could welcome you back to have you speak on it. Thank you.
Yes, we'd be happy to share any information as well. Our annual summary will include details of the success and what we learned and how we can continue to improve and activate and animate the village.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Before I go to you, Councillor Braithwaite, I'm just going to remind the public the call-in number that we have there, and that if there's anybody waiting in the queue and you want to speak to this item, just raise your hand and we'll know that you're there. We'll finish off with questions from the councillor. So, Councillor Braithwaite.
Actually, I was going to perhaps suggest you go to Councillor Green, as she is the Business Improvement Liaison. Prior to me, I'm just the alternate. So why don't we go to Councillor Green first?
Okay, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councillor Braithwaite. Yes, just quickly, we have a really good working relationship with Ms. Leary, and I know that through us, she will share information. We will be in touch with her on a regular basis, as we try to be on other issues. And I'm confident that we will certainly make, both Councillor Braithwaite and I will make efforts to keep council informed, as I know Ms. Leary will make the same efforts to keep us informed. So we really appreciate that. I think just quickly that this is a wonderful pilot, in fact, and I think it addresses other issues as well in the village. And I think I hope for much success. So thank you very much, Ms. Leary.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much. And just a question to staff. I know that there is, I believe, a busking bylaw in Oak Bay as it stands right now. And I know that we have had some issues in the past with individuals busking in the village without obviously being against the bylaw. So I'm wondering if that's going to be enforced moving forward, so that the people who are being hired by the BIA aren't going to run into any issues with perhaps people who would be busking on the streets.
So, Councillor Braithwaite, of course, that is the basis of one of the recommendations that staff is asking, but it's certainly worthy to have the commentary come from staff. Okay, so I'll refer this to staff.
Thank you, Chair Ney. It's Bruce Anderson here, Director of Building and Planning. Particularly with respect to the busking bylaw, that really for this speaks to selling services within the street right away. And in the context of the special event that's sanctioned and provided for by the BIA, that bylaw doesn't apply. We don't need to worry about that for the performers that are within the BIA event category. The second part is an anti-noise bylaw that has a particular clause within it that speaks to musical instrument and not providing for that. And that is what we're, as staff, we're suggesting that council consider directing us to not enforce that for purposes of this special event. Otherwise, we would enforce that for let's say buskers that are not functioning within the BIA special event category. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Do you have any other questions, Councillor Braithwaite?
No, actually, that answers my question. Thank you so much.
Okay, so with that, Councillor Green?
With Madam Chair's permission, then I would be happy to make the motion to support the staff recommendation, which is to call for endorsement of this pilot program.
and second, moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Braithwaite. Any further discussion? Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I do know that staff won't directly be involved. I presume this motion is the type of thing that would go to not only the staff, but also to our police. In case someone happens to call the police, it would be terrible if the police came out and went after the BIA. Just wanted to make sure that all that will happen after the fact.
So can we just have a confirmation from staff? It would seem like an obvious thing. I agree, but it's always worth just checking with staff that will be communicated, or?
That's already been communicated, Chair Ney. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Varela. Okay, so any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay, thank you very much. On to item 8, reports and memorandum. Yes,
I'm sorry. With respect to new business, I'm sorry. I wanted to throw in or give notice. Give notice of motion if I could, please.
Yes.
I intend to give notice of motion to ask staff with well, at least to assist me coming up with the wording of this notice of motion with respect to striking a community engagement committee, most likely for consideration in a strategic planning session later on in the year.
Okay, and you intend to bring that up at a later point as a motion? Is that at another?
I will work with staff on the wording of that so that it will be appropriate. But I wanted to at least give notice of that intention at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you.
So on to item 8, reports and memorandums, and we have here a couple of contracts to approve and review, and we have Mr. Haran, Director of Engineering, who will present and introduce, report on, and respond to any questions from council. And also Steve Rennick will also be present and able to jump in and respond to any questions as needed. So, Mr. Haran.
Yes, good evening, Chair Ney. Thank you, Council.
Welcome.
2 projects in this year's capital improvement program are nearing the final stages of the process before the start of construction here in the early fall. And that's the Windsor Road Sanitary Sewer Replacement, Phase 1, and the Cadwell Bay Road and Bowker intersection upgrade. So these projects are open or about to be open for competition in the invitation to tendering process, meaning we have completed detailed designs and we're inviting tenders so that we can receive and evaluate bids in mid-August with the aim of beginning construction in early September. The district's sustainable procurement policy outlines the goals and aims for the procurement of goods and services, and it guides and delegates authority to the Chief Administrative Officer to award contracts between $100,000 and $250,000. And that's why Council regularly sees reports from staff recommending contract awards for goods and services in excess of that amount. Because of the gap in Council meetings here this summer between today and the first likely meetings in September, and the desire for us to move through the stages of our capital program as quickly as possible, we're seeking authority from Council for these 2 particular projects specifically, that the authority to award a contract be delegated to the Chief Administrative Officer. As per the report provided on this issue, we'll continue to follow all of our standard best practices for the tendering process, and the aim of asking for this delegation of authority is just to reduce the delay between when the tenders are expected to be received here in the middle of August and the first council meeting in September. So it allows us to proceed a month or 2 sooner than would be possible if we waited until September. Both projects are approved projects in the capital program with a certain portion of the total capital budget allocated to them. And our expectation is that these tenders will come in under the expected costs. And if the tenders do come in higher than expected, as per the report, then it will have an impact on our broader program, and we would be bringing it back and that information back to Council September to seek further guidance on the way forward. So that's my introduction to this report. Happy to answer questions as you at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haram. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to staff, a couple of questions on this. The report in the second paragraph, the first line, it says 2 significant projects with budgets anticipated to exceed $250,000 will likely be ready to contract award in August. Could we have clarification on other than the bids that come in that are received, if this goes out, is there any other issues related to the projects that would in fact delay award of the contract?
So that's to Mr. Haran.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there's two projects. The one, Cadbro Bay Road and Bowker intersection upgrade, is already up on BC Bid, and the next is coming up soon, likely this week, Windsor Road. So when we say likely, I'm looking for the words here, likely be ready, there are a number of issues. So it's that could keep that from happening. The first one is we're expecting tenders. It is possible that we do an invitation tender and receive no tenders. It is possible that we receive tenders, but they're all non-compliant bids. In other words, they don't meet our requirements, or they haven't, say, for example, when you submit a tender, there's requirements in terms of proof of insurance, proof of references, and a whole bunch of things that we require as part of the evaluation. So if we have non-compliant bids, then we won't be ready to award contracts. We're making the assumption, it's very rare that happens, but we just wanted to be clear that if everything goes as normally, we expect some compliant bids that will be within the expected budget. We'll be able to evaluate them, make recommendations, the same way we would for tenders of lower budget, but because of the expected budgets, we would normally go to council to say, here's what we found. Council, could you provide the last step in terms of recommending for contract award? In this case, we're just asking for, if all those conditions are met, then we would be able to move forward a little bit more quickly.
Thank you for that clarification from the staff, Madam Chair. If I might continue. Just on the work to be done on the Bowker-Cadboro intersection, for members of the community that are interested in that, I know I've been getting questions on it, for residents who would like more to understand what the work will entail. Is there a place on the district's website that they can go to find the diagram of what is planned for that intersection?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I was just waiting for the chair to say I'm allowed to go speak.
I'm sorry, Mr. Herman.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay,
I didn't want to say it.
I'll use that. I see what you're waiting for. Thank you. I'll give you the cue, okay?
I hate speaking out of turn. I was like, am I allowed to talk?
You've been well trained. I can see that. Okay.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Chair. There is definitely an answer to that question. If you, on the municipal website, as you go to the in municipal hall and departments, you'll find engineering and public works, and on the engineering and public works page, there's a summary. There's a series of links called ongoing project update pages, and one of them is the Cadbro Bay Road and Bowker Avenue page, which has a summary drawing of the a high level drawing of what the works are expected to be for that project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I might just continue. Yep. On these projects, is there have schedules been determined? Could you just, perhaps staff could shed some light on particularly that intersection work? What would be the schedule that would be anticipated if the tender is successful?
Mr. Haran, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. I'll get into the rhythm of this, Mr. Haran. Yes,
well,
Mr. Haran.
So the invitations to tender close in the middle of August. It should take us about a week or so, probably less, to evaluate the tenders, and if we are able to make a recommendation and award a contract, we're likely to be able to begin construction less than a month later. And I don't have the documents in front of me, but I'm expecting a duration of 2 months, maybe 3 months maximum. It could be less than that for the intersection upgrade.
Thank you. And one last question on that, particularly because the intersection there's been a lot of community discussion about that intersection. And I do understand, certainly from previous reports from staff, some of the complexities of it. So providing the tender is successful, providing the project goes forward, I would trust then that there will be included as part of this project will be some form of monitoring and reporting back on the changes to the intersection and what the implications are for the transportation on that area. I know that many residents have talked about the number of accidents and whatnot. So hopefully as part of the project, there will also the performance reporting will come back to council. If we could just have clarification from Mr. Horan, that would be great. Thank you.
I'll let you respond to that, Mr. Horan.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ney. Absolutely. Anytime we make any project that we complete, whether it's a water project or a sewer storm, there are measures of performance that we're expecting to see, whether it's increased flows or some other kind of measure. When it comes to transportation, what we want to see is changes in driver behavior after or obvious improvements that are more palpable in terms of people are not as afraid to cross the street because there's a pedestrian refuge island and a pedestrian activated push button that they can press. So in this case, a lot of the feedback that we've received over the years here, because it's been a number of years that the community has been hoping to see intersection or changes here, is speeds, northbound cars, and then speeds of cars that are turning down the slip lane towards the beach on Bowker. So this intersection upgrade should address both of those issues. And then by shortening the distances that pedestrians need to cross the road, adding the signalized push buttons, and then continuing the bike lanes from the Cadbro Bay Road project just north of Bowker, which narrows the lane widths, it should have a traffic calming effect. But we will measure that as well to see that, make sure that that occurs as expected.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield the floor to other members of council.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Appleton, I think you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to staff. A bit of an extension from Councillor Patterson's question. Just will the scheduling of we expect that scheduling or beginning the projects this year will form part of the RFP spec? Like, are we requesting that of potential bidders?
Through you, Chair, I have not seen the specific language in the invitation to tender, but typically part of the reason why we have this report in front of you tonight is I believe we want this project to be started as soon as we can. So that's done before winter. We have concrete to pour, so we'd like to have it done before we get into November. So this is one of those projects for a number of reasons, has been in the program for quite some time. So we're just anxious to get going and build what we've been planning to build.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, thank you, Mr. Horan, for the report. Really appreciate it. I wasn't on council, I think, when this original decision was made and these issues were addressed. And my only question really is around timing. And I'm not attempting to rain on anyone's parade at this point, but my question is regarding the planned demolition and then reconstruction on the Oak Bay Lodge site. And the only reason I'm asking, do you feel in considering what changes might occur there in terms of egress, access, traffic patterns, on-site parking and so on for whatever facility is built, and we don't know yet what that will look like. And I also understand there's a lot of pressure and concern from the community on the upgrades to this intersection, which is why I'm sure you're anxious to get started. I'm just wondering, any changes to the intersection, will you be allowing for potential impacts from the Oak Bay Lodge redevelopment, given that we actually don't know what's going there? And I'm sure that we don't want to hold this up any longer than possible, but I'm just struggling a little bit with the timing. And so if you could address that, I'd really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Sorry, yes, could we refer that to Mr. Anderson?
Oh, I'll jump in there, Chair, to take that one.
Sorry.
I don't anticipate that there will be changes driven by any potential land use issues in that zone that won't require the developer to participate in those changes in terms of subdivision development bylaw type of offsite servicing. So this intersection is is not is outside of the boundaries of that land use. So and when we came up with the options there, we considered all of the use in the region, not just that particular intersection. So we think that that the design will hold up to the changes that we're anticipating in the coming years.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haran. Appreciate that. And are there any further questions from council? We have some recommendations. Oh, Councillor Zelka.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to give our Director of Engineering and Public Works advance notice that in section 9.1, having to do with a financial review, I'll be asking a question that will be related to another engineering project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Any further questions? So we're looking for a motion. We've got some recommendations here from staff. Councillor Green. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, just one last question to Mr. Haran. I'm just wondering about the integration of bike lanes at that site and how that might work. Thank you very much, Mr. Haran.
Mr. Haran.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before I answer that question, Mr. Rennick was kind enough to send me a text to remind me of something that I knew, but I'd forgotten. So the question about the timing of the beginning of the project, there is our standard tendering documents. The beginning of the project is meant to be within 15 days of the award of the contract, and that's a standard clause. And I'd completely forgotten that when the question came up. And then the question that was just asked was integration of the bike lanes. Yes, the Cadboro Bay Road bike lane project that the district completed in early fall of 2018 included extension down the hill, so northbound past Bowker Avenue. But because the Bowker development project on the corner there was being completed, essentially 3 design work. So the work done by the Bowker, by Abstract for that development, plus our intersection designs, plus the bike lanes work had to all be integrated so that it made sense. And there was quite a tight squeeze in there because of a bunch of different requirements, rights of way and necessity. So it does all fit together, and the bike lanes were not extended northbound until the paving was done and the underground work was done by the Abstract project. And then now that we're doing the intersection, we'll be able to finish the rest of it up so that the bike lanes will extend north of Bowker Avenue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haran, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Haran, I just have one question. It builds on some of the other questions that were asked. I recall council making this decision. I can't remember the exact date. If I had to guess, the first decision about this, I believe there were 3 options presented to the council. My memory was it was before the Bowker was even in place, but I thought it was like in 2016. Mr. Haran, you may be able to correct me on that, but the question I have is that my memory tells me, my recollection is that there were 3 options provided to council that varied in cost and sophistication. And my memory was that we chose the middle option as a compromise because of the price, and it seemed to give us what we needed given the concerns that were voiced by the public. The question I have, I don't know if you've had a chance, or because I don't believe you were on staff then, Mr. Haran, but and this is akin to some of the questions already asked, but given the not just the traffic patterning, but the pedestrian foot patterning because of the increase. Did I push a button, Ms. Williams? Okay, was that me? Did you hear that? Excuse me, council, just a sec. It said recording stopped. I didn't touch anything.
I think
Did I?
okay.
We're okay. It says live, but let's see where. Should we just wait, Ms. Williams?
Yes, if we could just wait a few
We'll just
minutes.
pause for a minute.
I also heard recording stop.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. We're back. Mr. Haran, are you there?
I am here, Chair, and you were just in the middle of
Right.
saying
Yeah.
a report that had 3 options, and I think you were about to ask a question there on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, and it's just a checking question. Is that, and I know we've gone down the path here in this decision, but sort of it's never too late. Is this still the appropriate option given what's going on, the increased activity, congestion, and what we now know and are able to experience in terms of increased traffic and pedestrian traffic? And I don't know, maybe you should answer the first question. Is it correct that there were 3 options presented many years ago?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So late in 2009 is when the district first commissioned a study on that intersection. And I don't know if it was that year or a year or two after, but there were 3 options presented there. And one of them was what I'll call essentially a do nothing option. So a $15,000 to $20,000 option to changing signs and some paint and so on. There was a middle option, which is an intersection upgrade, which is very similar to what we are doing at the moment. And then there was a roundabout option, which was putting a big roundabout in there. And that was discussed at the time and in the early 2000s. And I don't have in front of me precisely whether it was 2011 or 2010, but early on the minimal option was selected. So there were some changes made in terms of some minor paint and signage to improve a little bit, with the idea that soon after the middle option would be pursued. And the roundabout option was dismissed for its extensive cost because it was quite expensive comparatively. In $2009, it was $275,000, whereas the middle option, which was selected, was in $2009 was $115,000, so less than half. And then the idea was to complete that intersection upgrade as part of the capital program in the coming years. But that, it was kind of still in the idea stage when Abstract approached the district and started their rezoning process for their development. A lot of questions came up from the community about, well, what's going to happen with that intersection? At that time, council gave direction to take the community amenity contribution that Abstract provided for that intersection and to go ahead and design and then build the intersection change. So that's the last time that council and the community saw the potential options there and made a selection. And we believe, our team believes it is still a viable option in terms of balancing the various needs of the users in the area.
So, okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Haran, just for that background and how we got here, and also your confidence that this is the right option given the activity that's going on that corner now, which is quite different than it was in 2009, obviously. So thank you very much. And if there's no other questions, I'll certainly entertain, there's some recommendations. Councillor Appleton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll start by moving receipt of the report by Mr. Rennick, Manager of Engineering Services.
Moved by Councillor Appleton, second by Councillor Braithwaite. Any further discussion? All in favor? Against? Thank you very much. None. Okay, Councillor Appleton. Oh, did we move that? Yeah, we did that. Okay, you're on mute, Councillor Appleton.
Sorry about that. I will make the follow-up motions to move the staff recommendations for delegated authority for spending.
Okay, moved by Councillor Appleton, second by Councillor Brayton. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? None against. Okay, thank you very much. So we're on to item 8.2 under reports and memorandums, and we have a recommendation from the Heritage Commission. We have Mr. Anderson will be present and will jump in if needed. So do council have, are there any questions you'd like to ask of, you've got the report before you. Are there any questions you'd like to pose to Mr. Anderson? I'm not seeing anything. I'm wondering if there are no questions, if anybody would like to make a motion regarding the recommendation. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I will make the motion to receive the report by Mr. Anderson, Director of Building and Planning.
Moved by Councillor Appleton, second by Councillor Braithwaite. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Nobody against. Thank you. And there's a second recommendation. Councillor Appleton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to make the second recommendation that the Heritage Commission be advised that the designation of the restaurant portion of the Oak Bay Marina building will not be pursued at this time.
And seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any further discussion? Councillor Zelka.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. It makes a reference in the staff report. This is through you to staff. Staff talks about a possible, maybe an alternative or maybe a future alternative relating to placing the property on the Community Heritage Register. Is there any concern or restriction that staff would put forward with having, is there a need to do it now, or is this something we could do later?
Okay, we'll pose that question to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Ney. And as we outlined in the report, yes, there is an alternative to a heritage designation, that being a heritage register. What that does involve is looking at staff's work plan and also seeking some council direction regarding proceeding with that in the context of our other work that we undertake. I guess the short answer to the question is that it's something that could perhaps be pursued later, and it might be appropriate to do so in the future once we have a little more clarity on what we're doing with our marina. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And against? None opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Moving right along here on item 9, reports and memorandums. Item number 9.1, we have a report by Mr. Payne, and he'll introduce the report and respond to any questions. Welcome, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've prepared a short PowerPoint presentation, and with your permission, I'll present my screen for council and the public.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see that? Yeah, I'm seeing nods. That's great. Thank you. So I'm here to present the district's second quarter budget report 2021. Council receives a number of quarterly reports. First one every year is your second quarter budget report. So I presented just a quick snapshot in the staff report and on the slide here of forecasted revenues, expenditures, and capital expenditures to the end of the year. You can see forecasted revenues are expected to be $48.2 million or 89% of budget. Expenses 93%, and capital expenditures at 49.5%. All operating budget, special projects, and capital expenditures are forecasted to be within budget, but we'll explore some of the variances in a bit greater detail in the following slides. Unfortunately, the province declined the district's grant application for the upland sewer separation, so that accounted for the majority of the forecasted revenue shortfall this year of approximately $6 million. Parks, Rec, and Culture revenues are forecasted to exceed budget by $600,000. However, net Parks, Rec, and Culture operating costs this year will still be $1.8 million greater than the 2019 net operating budget. So we've done better than, or we're forecasted to do better than what our financial plan called for. However, there's still some ground to be made up post-COVID in terms of the operating performance of our revenues from there. With these items taken out of consideration, we're within 0.3% of forecasted revenues elsewhere. All operating departments are forecasted to underspend in varying degrees. Some departments have very small forecasted surpluses, others have large. Some of the larger ones include corporate administration, and the forecasted variance there is mainly due to staffing vacancies. All of the vacancies have been filled. The most recent vacancy filled would be the occupational health and safety manager, which is expected to start next week. And so we've got some staffing that were hired partial year, which is why we've got forecasted surpluses in that department. Similarly, in the police department, there's some officer vacancies. There's some turnaround there. So there's a forecasted surplus there as well. And in the water utility, there's some forecasted utility funded surplus expected, mainly because crews are utilized extensively in cost recovery work. So that work that the crews are undertaking is paid for on a user fee basis, which leaves us some additional funds left in our utility at the end of the year. Our capital expenditures are forecasted to exceed approximately $10.4 million by the end of the year. It's 49.5% of our approved expenditure limit. However, it would still be a new record for capital spending in the district. For reference, 2020 final capital spending was $5.9 million. So that would be a 76% increase in capital spending. So it's a lot of capital output expected by the end of the year. And that includes some additional work that's been directed by council throughout the year, including the pickleball relocation, as well as the Carnarvon Park tennis courts resurfacing. We've got some capital budget savings expected. The emergency generator that was tendered by the fire department, we're expecting a savings of nearly $40,000. And the vehicle and equipment replacement plan, we're expecting savings of approximately $80,000 by the end of the year. So funds used to fund those projects will remain in the reserve funds that they were sourced from. Now, our financial plan forecasted a net transfer from reserves of $9.1 million. And what that means is that we are putting some funds in reserves, and we're also taking some funds out, mainly to fund our capital expenditures. So the difference between those two was forecasted to be $9.1 million. But what the second quarter forecast is suggesting is that we will have a net transfer from reserve of $1.4 million. So that's $7.7 million to the good. The main drivers of that is, the deferral or underspending of capital expenditures. So we had a budget of over $20 million in capital expenditures, but we're forecasting $10.4 million. And so that money will remain in the reserve that was going to fund that difference there. And there's also other impacts, including the $1.3 million operating budget surplus that's forecasted, and $600,000 less that we'll need to use of the COVID-19 Restart Grant due to Parks, Rec, and Culture exceeding their revenue budget for this year. So just a quick snapshot. I thought I would provide council and the public with a quick snapshot of what our COVID-19 Restart Grant balance is expected to be by the end of the year. Our financial plan had forecasted just over $1 million to remain in that reserve by the end of the year. However, due to the Parks, Rec, and Culture exceeding revenue budgets, it's now forecasted to be about $1.75 million at the end of the year. So there's some additional funds expected to be in that reserve, which could potentially be used to support operations for Parks, Rec, and Culture moving forward, or other applicable expenditures. You'll notice also the schedules in the second quarter budget report. They align with the recently approved department budget transfer policy. So those disclosures are in Schedule F. And those are mainly disclosures of department usage of their budget. So some transfers between, one of the prominent transfers, for instance, is council approved a budget for new storm drain, brand new storm drain mains, which didn't exist in that area before. Due to some difficulties, we're not able to utilize that budget this year. So instead, that money is being used to replace existing storm mains. So that's one of the budget transfers that's been disclosed in Schedule F. And then in Schedule G and H, you have our recently adopted sustainable procurement policy disclosures in Schedule G and H. And that's mainly any single payment that the district has made over $25,000 or any contracts we've executed, which we expect to exceed $25,000. So it gives council and the public a snapshot of the contracts that we've signed and therefore the obligations that we've signed up for over the coming years. And keep in mind, the last time that we reported on these disclosures would have been Q3 of 2020. So these the timeframe for these disclosures are October 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2021. So they straddle 2 fiscal periods. So thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes the presentation. Staff are available for any detailed questions we have on any of the budget variances presented today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne, for shedding such clarity on these long lists of numbers. Much appreciate that. So back to council. Have any questions or comments about the second quarter report, budget report? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Payne, for the report. Some of my questions may be for you, but they may be for other members of the staff, because I recognize our Director of Finances does a financial reporting, but speaking to some of the projects is a little more difficult. So I just would like to go back to the commentary, and it's also in the report about the record-breaking capital. And I certainly agree that the amount of capitals that has been spent and is forecast to be spent this year surpasses the capital that budget from previous years. However, it is still only 50% of what was originally forecast in the budget. As we have undertaken under this council's term to add to taxation to fund reserve funds, which I support, I think that this will leave many residents wondering about the amounts of taxes that are being collected to boost up our reserve funds so we can do capital, and then having a year when we are only, in fact, spending 50% of the capital originally forecast or budgeted and then forecast for the year. So I'm wondering if Mr. Payne or staff could just comment on that a little more to clarify, please.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Yes, and you are quite right, Councillor Patterson. We do have all directors on deck here to answer any of the questions as it's is appropriate. So I'll pass this over to Mr. Horan or Mr. Payne to respond to, and if you need to disseminate it, I'll leave that to you, Mr. Payne.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will note, so thank you for that question, that a significant portion of the capital underspending will be attributed to the Upland Sewer Separation Project. So that totaled $5.4 million in the budget, and since the grant was declined, that spending won't occur without further council direction. So that's approximately half of the variance rate there. And some other prominent, it's called deferral capital spending, would include the 2 fire trucks, certainly making progress on the tenders for both of those. We do expect both tenders to be posted before the end of the year on those. That's over $3 million there. So there is underspending in other departments, but I would suggest that they're considerably less significant than those projects.
Thank you for those comments, Madam Chair. If I might just continue.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. On Schedule C of the operating budgets forecast, there the bylaw enforcement is under, and I am reading the statement that is attached to that, it says the additional half-time or 0.5 full-time employee approved by council in 2021. The forecast is, of course, under budget. So I'm just wondering how we rationalize that statement. What does that mean? And does it mean that the person start or it was a late start in the year? So perhaps if Mr. Payne could explain.
Mr. Payne, is that a question you're able to respond to? Or?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And a good question. Council will recall it in this year's deliberations that 0.5 FTE was approved for in additional bylaw enforcement staffing. Hiring into that position has recently concluded. I believe that the position either started this week or I believe it was this week, but I've been on vacation. So, so there's at least half a year there of surplus from that position.
Great, thank you. And continuing down on that report, I noticed that the street lighting budget, there's about an 18% variance forecast to budget. My street is still lit, so I take it there's there's been no change, but still 18% variance to budget. I'm wondering what the explanation is for that.
Mr. Payne?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So a good question. Had a robust conversation with the superintendent of public works, and there's a number of factors that result in that positive variance of approximately $44,000. The first factor was that there were several major rainfall events in 2021, and so you can see the superintendent of public works utilizing his budget creatively to ensure that he could fund those events, which means underspending in other areas. Furthermore, the district is seeing some energy savings that resulted from some of the LED streetlight replacements over the previous years. So those are all. So that's a positive. That's a positive development.
Great. And just a little bit further down, the pavement condition assessment at $95,000. That was grant dependent. The forecast is 0, so I take it that none of that work will be undertaken this year.
Sorry, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the pavement condition assessment is subject to a grant. The district hasn't applied for that grant just yet, and I believe that it's also partially deferred to ensure that other priorities are successfully executed. And perhaps the Director of Engineering Public Works would like to comment further on that one.
Okay, so Mr. Haran?
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's exactly it. We're still aiming to do it, but looking at the intensity of the program this year and the likelihood that we'd get the grant applied for and awarded before the end of the fiscal was considered unlikely. So we thought we'd just be clear that we're unlikely to progress this year as hoped for, but it's still in the books for. So we'll be able to start work on this, but probably won't be doing the condition assessment or the expenditures until the next capital year.
Thank you, Mr. Haran. Do you have any further questions?
I have a couple more, Madam Chair, if I might. The one is on further down under the fire department, the site prep for the apparatus bay. Some of the monies are obviously allocated. Others will be carried forward into 2022. I am just reconfirming my previous questions, and that is that before the work is undertaken, that will come back to council so that we understand exactly what that project will look like before we actually start purchasing the portable apparatus bay and installing it on the site.
Mr. Payne, would that be for you or Mr. Haran or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is my understanding that prior to any site alterations there, that would be brought back to council.
Okay, and just one more, if I might, if we could get a bit of a status update on the Todd House improvements. The forecast, they were budgeted at 363. Oh, sorry, I've got to look down here again. 363, and they're forecast at much lower rate. So I am wondering, I know that the work is required, and so I'm wondering what the schedule is looking like for those repairs and remediation to Todd House.
Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the project is being deferred until 2022. So we still anticipate the expenditures to proceed. I believe the Director of Engineering and Public Works recently hired some programmers for our capital budget. And because some of the complications of that site, it's just not possible to proceed until 2022. But Director Horan might be able to confirm that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Payne. Councillor Patterson, did you have any other questions?
No, I don't. Madam Chair, I again thank Director Payne for this Q2 report to us, and I yield the floor to other council members. Thank you.
Okay, before I'm going to go to Councillor Appleton and then Councillor Braithwaite, but just before I do, I'm just going to remind, because we will invite some public input before deciding on receiving this item, but I just want to remind the public of the number that's displayed on the screen to use that to call in. And if you are in the queue there, put your hand up if you wish to speak to this item, and I'll call upon you when the councillors have had their completed their questions. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to staff, a couple of questions. Firstly, just with respect to the COVID-19 Restart Grant, I appreciate the update and timely numbers being presented by the director, just in terms of happy to see Parks, Rec and Culture revenue outperforming expectations. I think we were expecting modest things this year just with COVID, so I'm glad to see that that we came in greater than expected, and I understand the transfer of those funds back to that dedicated reserve. I think council had already decided to retain those funds into the subsequent year, understanding that revenue may not return to normal for at least for some time. So I wanted to ask the question about essentially whether or not there was a plan to reevaluate that revenue at a certain juncture. We had talked about the upcoming fiscal year, but given the fact that we now have some more funds than were expected, is there a plan on a certain schedule to reevaluate and potentially look at other options for that grant, or whether or not we would decide at one juncture that those grant funds would be best spent elsewhere?
So, so Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Appleton, Q3 will be our best snapshot of how Parks, Rec and Culture operations are trending. We don't know what will happen between now and then. And that'll give us a greater idea of what the COVID-19 Restart Grant will look like beginning in 2022. So it will be either at that time that council will be given a number of options, or during budget deliberations of 2022 at the latest, unless we receive direction from council to evaluate that in an earlier, more expedited way.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you to staff, and thank you, Madam Chair, for that. That's great. Second question, I just wanted to note that I noted that the $30,000 that were assigned to community climate grants have a notation here that obviously those are not being dispersed because the program to disperse them is not yet designed and implemented, with the understanding that that was delayed, one of the many things delayed by COVID. I'm just wondering whether or not the transfer of those funds to reserve, in any way limits us to accessing those funds for such time as that grant program becomes initiated. I don't want to stray too far into the operational category here, but I'd like to get a little bit of clarity about does the transfer of those funds to reserve imply that the program design component around that granting program is further deferred as well?
Mr. Payne, is that something you're able to speak to?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The funds will be transferred to the Climate Action Reserve only in the case where the program doesn't spend it. So if there's an opportunity for that program to be launched this year and utilize those funds, that's what will happen. The transfer to reserve would preserve it for future climate action in the future, but it shouldn't restrict current year programs. And also keep in mind that the funding for those grant and rebate programs are organic. So in other words, they're already included in the annual budget every single year, tax funded. So every year there will be at least $30,000 in tax funding. And then council can choose to top that up with whatever balance is in the reserves. Council will have to consider a couple things because this year the province announced the end to the CARIP grant, which is what funded the balance in the Climate Action Reserve. So they no longer will be growing. And so council will have to discuss what our plans with that reserve will be.
Thank you very much. I have one further question, Madam Chair. Thank you. I notice that and probably not unexpectedly, that the drainage operating expense is over budget, and with a notation that it's in response to our significant flood rainfall events this past year. Just wondering, probably a question for the Director of Engineering and Public Works, but does this increased operating expense constitute things like staff overtime and those types of things that are incurred by having to call in additional people and on off hours to help respond to those things, to those flooding events?
So to Mr. Payne, or that might go to Mr. Haran, I'm not sure, but.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I can take that one. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's easier, it's much easier when we're all in the room. We can make eye contact and know who's going to speak. Absolutely. So our operating budget is based on a standard predicted typical year, and it funds the material and the people time for the various maintenance work that we do. So that can mean things like hydrant maintenance, valve turning in the water side, for example. But when there are unexpected events that occur, it's the same amount of people, but potentially more hours or more hours in certain areas than a standard year. So what we'll see is over budget in certain areas of the operating budget, but those same people will be doing less of the other maintenance. So we have to figure out ways to either defer that maintenance or compensate in some other way. But it's pretty much the quickest way to see if there's more things happening unexpectedly in a year than others. Another great example of that is when we have years with lots of snow. You see those the snow budget and salting budget being way out of whack, and then at the end of the year we'll be under in some other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haran. Any other questions, Councillor Appleton?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, but I will take the opportunity to just point out that because staff have done their usual excellent job in making the numbers work, and the budget obviously is progressing in an excellent direction, but in my view, this additional expenditure for response to this past year's floods on balance in the budget is not immediately obvious, but you can see that it is a significant expenditure. And I just take the opportunity to say that, as the Director Horan noted, there's a typical year and then there's an atypical year. And this is a climate change related expense. And I think that you members of the public should be aware that this type of expense in an atypical year, pretty soon the atypical year is going to be the typical year. And so you can now see the impacts of climate change showing up on the district's balance sheet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. So we've got Councillor Braithwaite and then Councillor Zelka.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Director Payne for presenting the information, as always, in an easy to understand way. A couple of my questions have already been asked, but I would like to actually just go to page 5 of your staff reports, Mr. Payne, under Schedule B, the budget surplus summary. And this is just a really niggly little formatting thing, but when I first saw the property tax penalties and interest figure, I was thinking that it was like 7 million instead of 7,000. And I'm just wondering if in the next report, if we could perhaps format that so it doesn't have the decimal spots and isn't as confusing.
Is that to Mr. Payne, Councillor?
Yeah.
Braithwaite? Okay.
It's just a formatting thing.
Did you
Yes,
want to comment, Mr. Payne, or?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. I noticed that formatting here this morning and was disappointed that I put it there because I thought the same thing. Oh no, what does this mean? So yes, I apologize for that. We'll round to the nearest dollar.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thanks again for your report. It was great.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Braithwaite? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. And echo incredible thanks for this very easy to read, which is hard to say for a financial report, but thank you. It's actually rather enjoyable. And this report gives me a wonderful opportunity to ask some questions that are collecting up from some of the constituents. I'm, I guess, referring to probably projects that are maybe embedded on the projects listed out in page 10. In particular, the capital expenditures having to do with engineering services. I imagine my questions will be in there. And through you, Chair, I'll be asking questions most likely to Director of Engineering and Public Works. Very, very quickly, so there's room for the public to continue or to ask their questions. On the Uplands schedule, with respect to the Uplands, I know we've lost or didn't get the grant. Is it possible that, to the best of the Director of Engineering ability, what is the effect of the schedule? For example, when will ground be broken on sewer separation, for example?
So that'll be to Mr. Horan?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Ney. Through you to Councillor Zelka. The plans from 2018 onward, when the district submitted the grant application to the Investing in Infrastructure Canada program, the environmental quality green procurement section of the grant program. What we submitted in this case was a 3-phase ask. So that was in terms of the $22 million, the full both catchments, Rutland and Humber, including construction of the Humber catchment, design of the Rutland catchment, and construction of the Rutland catchment. And that's where the $22 million come from. But we split it into phases so that the province had opportunities to award less in case they didn't want to give the whole shebang. So that would be approximately, if I recall correctly, 11 or 12 million for construction of the Humber catchment, and then a portion for the design of the Rutland and so on. But the 5-year financial plan and our capital program was dependent on and Council's direction on this issue up until now has been grant award based. So now, with receiving this news, it's staff's job to come back to the council with a broader update on the program and to seek some direction in terms of where, when, and where to make the funds available, or to seek other methods to start the project. So we're basically need to come back to get some input at the governance level about the way forward on this project. And that's the intention in the near future, but the news is so fresh that
yes.
We're providing the information now and then need to come back to provide that information to the council and the community.
Thank you very much. Very clear, and I appreciate the delicate way you put it. Quick question about two other projects. Electric vehicle stations. I'm getting questions about that. Any idea when those might be pressed into service, please?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Zelka, we are in the middle of doing that. I would predict this fall. We've done some design work so far in terms of the available stations, and so I predict that we'll be on schedule with completing that in the fall.
Fantastic. And the most questions I'm getting is about something which I'm not quite sure where it falls in the list, and which budget is not particularly relevant. But I understand, with respect to Victoria bike lanes being extended to Foul Bay along 4th Street, that we are or will be making changes to the Cadborough Bay intersection at Foul Bay, probably related to the Victoria bike lanes coming in. And I saw in an email, I don't know whether we've actually approved this or not, maybe I missed a meeting, but with respect to the right turn channel, how do I say this? The westbound right turn channel, that this is in particular the northeast corner of Cadborough Bay, Foul Bay at Cadborough Bay. There is a right turn channel that allows traffic to head north. I had heard that, in fact, members of the public are asking me that they had heard that channel is being removed or potentially will be removed. Is this something we've approved, or is this something that will be coming back to council? I just wanted to ask about that, because it'd be terrible if it happened over the summer and then suddenly I'd be surprised. So I thought I would ask if you don't mind.
So we'll go back to Mr. Rand, if you could follow that exactly in terms of the orientation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. When the district built the portions of in terms of the bike lanes and the new lane configuration from Cadbury Road at Foul Bay past the high school north, that included what was happening in the intersection itself, and there was consultation and discussion with the City of Victoria, and so that the two designs would interconnect. And at that time, this is in 2018. They had confirmed that our plans on the Oak Bay side would match with their future plans, and now they've caught up. So we expect that when the City of Victoria finishes their portion on their side of the border, that there will no longer be such an offset in terms of the vehicle travel lanes through the intersection as you're going eastbound. So they should connect correctly. I have not heard anything in terms of the question you're talking about in terms of turning lanes or any significant changes of that nature. I can say, though, that it's part of our work plan, the district's work plan in the next year or two, or hopefully less than two, as we reevaluate, as we do with many places in the district, but including this intersection, as we start looking at how safe the intersection is and the level of service in terms of how quickly and how well traffic flows through that, balancing the needs of pedestrians and cyclists and so on at the same time. So I would say that in future capital programs, there's likely to be an intersection upgrade in terms of signalization there, but we're not that far ahead yet in terms of our analysis to make any predictions on what that might mean to turning lanes or signals.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I want to say thank you. I presume that once the final design has been set in the work plan, it'll come to council for final approval, I presume. And that would be the last of my questions.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Horan.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that, Chair.
No,
absolutely. I think this is one of those ones where signal upgrades are quite an expense. So the Foul Bay Road and Oak Bay Avenue, for example, as a capital project, was just an upgrade of signals, and it was with an ICBC grant. So it definitely came to the governance level table. And I think that because this one has an interface with the City of Victoria, potentially shared expense, potentially shared design efforts, and definitely mutual impacts in terms of changes that might be made, that this would definitely be something that the council would see and participate in the early stages of a potential capital project there.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Thank you, Mr. Payne, Mr. Horan. Before we go to a motion, let's see if there's anybody in the public. We've got the number up there. If you are there and you wish to speak, please just raise your hand, or if you've got a number in there, push 9 to raise your hand if you're online. So we've got the number up there. It's been on display. I'm not seeing anybody come in here. So I think we can move to a place to receive the report. So if anybody would like to, looking for a motion.
I will move that, Madam Chair.
Moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Zelka. Is there any further discussion? Was that, nope, okay, call the question, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Great. Thank you very much to staff for putting that together. Clearly a lot of interest. Thanks for the council for lots of really good questions. The numbers do mean something as we go forward, and that's very clear from the discussions we've just had. So thank you all. On to item number 292. We have another report from Mr. Payne about the Kings Road Community Nature Green Space Contribution Funding Source. So Mr. Payne, if I can ask you to just provide us with the overview of the report, and we'll see if any of the councillors have questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On June 7th, the district received delegation from the District of Saanich requesting between $60,000 and $90,000 in funding for the district for the protection of Kings Road Community Nature Green Space. Council asked that the letter be referred to staff to report on associated financial options and implications. Staff have prepared 3 options for council consideration if council wishes to proceed with a contribution. The first option is a combination of the grant and aid and events operating budget. Those budgets are forecasted to underspend this year by approximately $75,000. Our grant and aid budget was underspent this year by $25,000, and our events budget is expected to be underspent because the Oak Bay Tea Party isn't proceeding. So that would be a combined total of $75,000. Other options would be our contingency account. Our contingency account is typically used for unavoidable and unanticipated costs, so perhaps not the best use in this case. And then finally, our accumulated surplus reserve. Since we're expected not to spend all of our financial limits of that reserve this year, we could fund it from there. Available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Councillor Green. And then Councillor Apple.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. This is really helpful. I was hoping perhaps that you would make a recommendation to make this a bit easier, but I just wondered, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and I will totally understand if you decline, but is there one option over another that you might recommend? Is there guidance here that I could ask for? It's difficult. So I'm just wondering, is there one that is a preferred option in your professional opinion, or this is our decision, obviously, so you don't have to answer the question, but I just would appreciate any comment you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Now, just so you know, I wondered that myself and started getting nervous about having to think about which one, but I do notice that in the grid that staff have provided in bold under the first one, grants and aid, there's a bracketed recommended here. So maybe we can ask staff what that was intended to mean and ensure that your question is fully answered. Mr. Payne?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So staff will be providing a recommendation in terms of whether or not we proceed with the contribution. That's a council decision. But should council wish to contribute, staff recommended the grant and aid events operating budget. We know that those budgets are going to be underspent this year. So if council wishes to use those funds for this reason, they're available. The other 2 options are legitimate options, but they're not as recommended for the reasons in the report. The contingency account really should be available for unanticipated and unavoidable costs. And the accumulated surplus funding was earmarked for other projects that won't occur this year, but will need funding in the next year, which is why the grant and aid and events operating budget option is the recommended if council wishes to proceed.
I see. Okay. Go
Madam
ahead,
Chair, just quickly, thank you very much for that. I certainly wasn't asking you to make the chief decision, which is whether or not to do this. And I really appreciate, I must have missed the bolding, and thank you, Madam Chair, for pointing that out, and to Mr. Payne for reinforcing that. Thank you very much to both of you.
No, good to get it clarified. Let me see. I'm going down the order that are people. I don't know that's when you put your hands up. So I've got Councillor Braithwaite, or Councillor Appleton. You were there first, weren't you? Yep. Is that right? And then I didn't see between Braithwaite and Zelka. Okay, Braithwaite and Zelka. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to staff. And I too appreciate the way this, I appreciate the information that staff have provided here. I felt confident that Mr. Payne would be able to take this away and come up with some good options for us. I was just wondering whether or not there might be an additional option. I think that the recommended option as far as funding source makes sense to me. If we wanted to extend that $75,000 available there to the full $90,000 that was requested, the upper limit of what was requested, would it also be possible to draw the additional $15,000 from the accumulated surplus reserve? So a combination of those three different funding sources, and possibly comment on the impact of a $15,000 draw from the accumulated surplus reserve rather than an up to $90,000 draw.
Thanks, Councillor Appleton. Mr. Payne?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, a combination between option 1 and 3 is most certainly possible. Since even option 3 could accommodate the full $90,000, it most certainly can accommodate $15,000 of it to top up option 1. So most certainly an option if council wanted to proceed that way.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much. I actually, I mean, I'm so supportive of this, but there's a couple of concerns that I have. And number one, I would actually go the opposite way of Councillor Appleton. I would actually like us to go at the $60,000 level, because I would like to keep $15,000 in our grants and aid account, because it's only July and we still have a portion of the year left to go, and so who knows what might come forward in that time. I really think it's a good thing to support. So I'm hoping that we will go for the 60,000 rather than the 90,000. And also another reason for that is because you know, I have a little bit of trepidation in putting money towards something that's in a different municipality. And I wonder what kind of a precedent that might set. And I know that Mayor Haynes said it wasn't going to set any precedent and it was only going to be a one-time thing. But I do have a little bit of a niggly worry in the back of my head about that. So my preference would be to go for 60,000 and to leave $15,000 in our grants and aid for future needs as they might show up. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Braithwaite. So, Councillor Zelka.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I asked a question in was a committee of the whole, and I didn't see the option appear here. Maybe I was being much too subtle, but I was hoping for a fourth option that would show Oak Bay's District of Oak Bay on title. In other words, instead of the monies coming out of an operational fund, it would come out of a capital fund. In order for that to happen, we would have to be on title, not unlike what we did for the Royal and McPherson Theatres when we put all of our monies together, Saanich, Victoria, and Oak Bay, to purchase those capital items. I was hoping that some similar arrangement could be done for purchasing this capital item. If that was done, I would feel much more comfortable about putting the $90,000 forward to it, maybe aligned in some ways with Councillor Braithwaite's comments. Just wondering if staff could possibly make reference to what might be possible with respect to the use of capital funds and districts' names being on title.
Thanks, Councillor Zelka. I presume we could go to Mr. Payne on that question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and Councillor Zelka is correct. Staff made note of those comments from the councillor at the committee of the whole. The option to the co-owners of the property that would have been purchased, it is possible as far as we can tell, and certainly it opens up the district's reserves could be used then for that. The district's capital reserves could be used for that because we can use those reserves to purchase parkland or other capital, even if it's not in the district. That option itself is complex and it would require additional time and consideration, which is why it wasn't presented in this report. And furthermore, staff didn't receive council direction to proceed with that option, mainly because of the complexity of it.
If I may continue, understood. I guess it would have to be a council direction, but I get the impression that the request from Saanich is what's driving this, and Saanich is requesting essentially a grant donation to something that they would own. If I understand correctly, that is the request?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Payne, I apologize. Sorry. I was thinking about the question.
I just was wondering who's driving the bus here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's how staff have understood their request, is that they're looking for a cash contribution, and they would end up with the asset at the end of the day, whether it be a park dedication or an actual registered owner on title.
Well, if it's too complex and it's not possible, in terms of moving forward, I was hoping we could possibly leave some funds in grant in aid for the latter third or the latter quarter of the year, and possibly take some funds out of more funds out of option 3 to get it up to the 90,000. So maybe 50,000 from grant and aid and 40,000 from accumulated surplus to give us a total of 90 would be something that I would lean towards, but that's me. Just so that we at least have some reserve funds available for our district granting.
Okay.
And I'll leave that on the table to see how what other councils pick up on. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a number of permutations developing here. Oh, we've got Councillor Green. Go ahead, Councillor Green. You have some questions for staff?
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to make some comments, but I'll wait.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Green, why don't we go and see if there's anybody in the public, and then we can come back for comments working towards a motion here. Okay, so just to the public, if there's anybody there, the number's on the screen. If you do dial in, press 9 to raise your hand. It doesn't appear there's anybody dialing in, so let's come back to the council then. And Councillor Green, we'll start with you. So what we're looking for is we've got a report to receive and a motion to make around recommendation here based on the report. So Councillor Green, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I haven't had a chance to hear all of my colleagues speak, so I was waiting for that opportunity before I made a final decision. But I do know, first of all, that there has been a lot of support for this particular request. A lot of it outside of our community, but certainly close by. And I'm also aware that during times of climate change, a park like this in an urban center is a really important piece of property and provides, a very, very significant contribution to wellness and to the quality of life in the urban core. And we are trying to save trees and parkland. It's very important. I'm also aware that we have our own parks, that some of which require ongoing maintenance, some more than others. I'm specifically thinking now about Carnarvon Park, and it serves a very large population in Oak Bay, as well as others outside Oak Bay. So that's sort of, and I think others might share my struggle a little bit, that I'm weighing all of that against this request. However, Having said that, and being supportive and wanting to be supportive of a partner like Saanich, and I do believe, I'm not aware of any other arrangement like this that has been requested of another municipality, but given that they are a neighbor and given that we do share some common goals, particularly around environmental protection and so on, I would certainly support something in the range of $60,000, and I'll tell you why. Victoria did support.
Councillor Green, Councillor Green, I'm wondering, do you want to make that into a motion and then speak to it, or would you rather just speak to your point?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't really want to cut off discussion at this point and make that motion, but okay, why
we
don't
are
we give
ready. We are ready for, I think we're ready for, I think it'd be helpful for us to focus in if we had a motion on the table.
Okay,
if you would like.
I'll give it a whirl. Thank you very much. So I move that we receive Director Payne's report, and two, that we provide a $60,000 donation to Saanich to support their effort to not only purchase but maintain this park space as a once-only donation.
Okay, I wonder if we can put those into two separate motions, and let's receive the report if we can. I think that might be an easier.
Okay, I'll move to receive the report then. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, so moved by Councillor Green, second by Councillor Braithwaite. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. Okay, good. Okay, so you've made the motion, Councillor Green. Ms. Williams, do we have a record of that? Do you want to read that back? Can somebody read that, Pat? You've already made your motion. Was there a seconder to the motion, or do you want Councillor Braithwaite? Okay. Do people need the motion reread? Councillor Appleton?
Well, Madam Chair, I was just wondering if I could ask, what is being asked of staff here is to outline the funding source desired. So I was just wondering whether the motion, if made, could outline where the movers where the mover saw that those funds coming from.
Okay, so Councillor Green, do you want to speak to that? Did you?
Yes, and I'm sorry that I omitted that from my motion. So let me rephrase then.
So we could make an amendment to what you put on the table, though I don't know if anybody's got that written down. There was quite a bit of material in there.
Sorry.
Just wait. No, it's okay. It's a little bit complex, Councillor Green. I'm just going to refer to Ms. Williams and ask for some advice so that we can move this forward cleanly. Ms. Williams? I'm going to turn this off and let her help us out. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that Councillor Green is looking to move a motion that $65,000 be contributed to the District of Saanich for the purchase of the lands under discussion, and we'll make sure that we capture that appropriately. And of course, we're just waiting to find out where that would be funded from, and then we would need a seconder.
I think it was 60.
Yes, it was 60, not 65. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, do we need an amendment to that motion, or it was seconded, or can we just, how do you suggest we move forward? Because the source of the funding was not included in the motion. How do we address that now to make sure it's clear?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, an amending motion that directs where the funds will come from would be in order at this time. So currently we have a motion to contribute $60,000 towards the project on a one-time deal, so to speak. So a motion to amend that to direct where the funds would come from, and then we can vote on the motion as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Okay.
Madam Chair, do you want me to make the amendment, or would someone else like to do that?
No, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I will add the amended portion of the motion that these funds be taken from the Grants in Aid program.
Okay, so that's amended. Is there a seconder to that? Is that Councillor Braithwaite seconding that? Okay, so on the amendment then, is there any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Just for clarification, it's from the grant and aid and events operating budget that is recommended in the staff report. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay,
my
thank you.
understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Wait a minute. Councillor Appleton, did you have something else you wanted to add here?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify. I understand what Councillor Braithwaite is saying, but I just want to clarify. In the staff report, it does indicate that essentially that of that under the grant and aid and events operating budget, those are two distinct quantities. In that the grant and aid budget would be 25,000, and that the event budget forecasted to be underspent by 50,000. So that's not, as I understand it, one chunk of funds, but rather comes from 50,000 from one source and 25,000 from another source. I know that Councillor Braithwaite made the notation earlier, her concern about making sure that there are grant and aid funds available. So I'm wondering whether or not a $60,000 ask would constitute $50,000 from the events budget and then $10,000 of the $25,000 grant and aid budget being allocated for that purpose, if I have that right. I think Councillor Braithwaite is nodding, so maybe I have that correct.
That was my understanding, Councillor Appleton. Thanks for pointing that out. Councillor Green, you made the motion, so I would acquiesce to you.
Yes, thank you very much to both of you. So let's specify that a certain amount comes from grant in aid and a certain amount from the events budget, as Councillor Appleton and Councillor Braithwaite reiterated.
Okay, now I'm just going to go back to staff, just make sure, because I'm not, some of you are more confident than I am, but if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to staff and ask for some clarification, given the discussion, exactly what would be needed in this motion to make it clear and legitimate. So Ms. Williams, do you mind if I'm going to ask you to give us a hand here?
Thank you, Madam Chair. From what I understand, the amendment that's on the table right now is to amend the motion to direct that the contribution be funded $10,000 from the grant in aid budget and $50,000 from the events operating budget.
You, Ms. Williams, and that's all just dandy. That's clear, and that sounds like that concurs with Councillor Braithwaite and what Councillor Green intended to say.
Yes, and I'm sorry for the confusion.
No, it's a little bit confusing here. And Ms. Williams, do we need to make an amendment given what has just been clarified? Is that another amendment that would be required?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, the amendment is on the table now. It's been moved, it's been seconded and clarified. Now there's just a discussion on that and then a vote on the amendment and then discussion and vote on the main motion as amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay,
Councillor Ney, you're muted.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving right along here. So if is there any further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would vote against the amendment, unfortunately, even though I favor that, overall the idea I agree with. I would like to see us potentially make a larger contribution by drawing some of funds from the accumulated surplus reserve. But I will listen to my colleagues' opinions as well.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting in favor of the amendment, and once we vote on that, I'll be moving an amendment to move forward a further contribution, most likely from the accumulated surplus. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. Oh, there's Councillor Patterson. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is certainly getting complex. I have difficulty supporting the motion before us. I also would like to get the contribution up to at least $75,000. And in speaking to that, I do recall, certainly from Mayor Haynes' presentation, that the District of Saanich purchased the land from the hydro for a sum of $5.5 million. So the District of Saanich, in order to preserve this land so that we could in fact even be considering this, has already contributed that, and their options, if they then do not, if they're not able to secure some of the funding they want, would be to sell off a portion of the land in order to recoup some of their costs. And I understand the rationale for that, but I understand how very important these lands are to both districts and to Victoria as a green space, and vitally important to our longer term plan for the Bowker Creek 100-year plan and the restoration of Bowker Creek. So, I think that although the lands will be with Saanich, as will be the long-term care of those lands will be to Saanich and not to this district, I am in favor of us upping the contribution that we are making to do our part for land that is going to significantly impact on the Bowker Creek watershed that comes through our lands. And I think it's important, and it also recognizes that the District of Saanich is carrying really the lion's share of the purchase price of this and the long-term care of the land. So that's, my opinion on it. So, I was thinking of 10,000 from the grant and aid, 50,000 from the events, and 15,000 from the accumulated surplus. So, but I will listen to the discussions as they're ongoing. Thank you.
Okay, is there we've got an amendment on the table here for a $60,000 in total contribution. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? So in favor, Councillor Braithwaite, Green, Zelka, and Patterson, and opposed? I can't see everybody, so I can't see if everybody I can't see it, Councillor Appleton, on my screen. There we go. Okay. Were there any opposed? None opposed. Okay. So that's the amendment. Now we'll go back to the original motion. And Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to pass or put forward another amendment to the main motion along the lines of, it would read something like this: and further, that $15,000 be added to the total, and that these funds come from the accumulated surplus reserve.
Just writing it down, Councillor Zelka, but I know staff will be too. Okay, and we've got a seconder, Councillor Appleton. Okay, so Councillor Zelka, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I actually agree with some of the previous comments. I just thought 60, it wasn't enough. I might lean more towards 90, but at least 75 at a bare minimum. And also I note that staff is also recommending that amount as well. So I appreciate all the discussion. I appreciate how we've spread it out across the various funds and budgets and surpluses. And it seems like something very doable. My only wish is that our name be untitled, but I'm sure our name will be on a sign somewhere to saying that we contributed something. So I think it's quite a reasonable thing for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Councillor Appleton, did you want to motivate?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, I concur. I like the idea of us making a larger contribution, spreading it out over a number of different funds, and that this, noting that this still will leave some funds in the grant and aid budget for unanticipated things coming forward in the upcoming year. And I think in a year where we've lost probably our marquee event in the Tea Party, and that the substantive portion of this contribution would come from unspent funds from the Tea Party. We can't do that thing which is so important to the community. I think it's a great time and a great year and a great cause to use those funds towards something that's important for our region and for our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Patterson, then Councillor Braithwaite. I'm not sure the order. If I've got it wrong, let me know.
I'm not sure either.
Okay.
However, I thank you, Madam Chair, and I support those the comments of in this addition of funding. The ask was for 60 to 90,000. I think the 75,000 meets it part way, and I think that it is. I think it will be greatly appreciated, and it'll be one of these projects that we may not fully appreciate the benefit of in the immediate time period, but certainly it's a legacy for future generations, and I think it is really important. Green space is being lost at a rapid rate, and so to preserve this is very important. And I think it's also very very appropriate that the whole motivator behind this was originally an Oak Bay resident that got it started, and so I'm grateful for that, and I'm also grateful to the colleagues around our council table who are willing to up the contribution to the District of Saanich in assisting with the purchase of the land. Thank you. Thank you,
Councillor Patterson. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much. And I really appreciate the conversation that we're having, the debate that we're having. I fully support us supporting this initiative. However, I do really feel quite strongly that we should keep it at the $60,000 level. I don't think Saanich would have asked us for 60 to 90 if they didn't think we would go at 60. City of Victoria went at the low end of what they were asked for as well. I think that us showing our support at the $60,000 level shows that we do feel it's really important to keep this green space within our community. For me, $15,000 in our budget is like $250,000 in Saanich's budget or Victoria's budget. And we need that $15,000 to put towards things within our own community, like playground equipment or something like that, or we would always have something else to spend that money on. So I think the $60,000 for me, I'm very comfortable at, but to move it up to the 75, I would prefer to keep that money within our own community for something, an initiative within our own community. And so I'll sadly be voting against the motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to call, oh, wait, Councillor Green, I think I saw your hand come up, but I can't see you.
Yeah.
There you are. Yep.
And there's a part of me that I should have gone with my instinct, which was to wait for the full conversation at the table before making a motion, because I think in this case, the full conversation has been very beneficial. I'm also gratified by, as Councillor Braithwaite points out, my colleagues' generosity on this issue. I too felt that the $60,000 figure was reasonable and fair, only because I know we have needs in our community that are equally pressing, equally important. However, one always comes to these issues with an open mind, and I'm sufficiently persuaded by my colleagues and I will support this motion. Thank you.
Okay. So we have the amendment on the table. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the discussion. All in favor? And opposed? One opposed. Okay, now we go back to the main motion. Okay, so now the main motion is on the table with the $75,000, with the What is the main motion? Okay, back to count.
Just
I've lost it. I've lost it.
60.
60 plus 15, which is 75.
No,
You're
Councillor Day,
muted.
you're
You're
muted.
muted.
Okay, so we've got a motion with 60, but we made an amendment with the 75, correct? So I'm going to ask, I don't know what to do with that actually, so I'm going to ask staff.
Sorry.
Want to mute?
Can
Go
I,
ahead, Councillor, but maybe you can figure this out.
sorry, can I ask a question? I'm so sorry. I thought we just, I thought that we just made a motion and voted on adding $15,000 from another fund. So that $15,000 is taken care of. And now we are voting on the actual $60,000, which was the original motion. Is that not correct?
I'm going to just, I think that is probably right. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that, are you muted? My apologies, we're close neighbors this evening. So the main motion as amended is what's on the table right now. And that is that $60,000 be contributed to the District of Sechelt for the protection of the Kings Road Community Nature Green Space, funded with $10,000.
Yep,
Saanich, District of Saanich.
My apologies. Did I say Sechelt? That was Freudian.
Well, that's because you worked up there, maybe.
Close. So the initial part, the main motion was the $60,000 to be contributed to the District of Saanich for the protection of the Kings Road Community Nature Green Space, funded with $10,000 from the grant and aid budget and $50,000 from the events and operating budget, and that an additional $15,000 funded through the accumulated reserve funds be added to the contribution. So
Okay.
the full motion is what you're voting on right now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Okay, so is that clear to everybody? Yes, Ms. Braithwaite.
So I'm
Councillor
so
Braithwaite.
sorry. That's not clear to me. I thought, and obviously incorrectly, that we had already voted on the $15,000 and now we were voting on the 60, because if we're voting on the full 75, then I'm going to have to vote against that motion. And that is not what I want to do. I want to show my support for the 60,000. I didn't show my support for the 15,000. So I thought that we were dividing it up, that we were going to vote on the $60,000 first, and then Councillor Zelka put another motion on the floor.
Yes.
That was for the 15,000.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to ask staff to repeat the motion that we just passed as the amendment. If I could ask staff to please read that back, and then Councillor Zelka, if you want to, just for clarification, Ms. Williams, could we ask?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the last motion that was voted on and was carried with one opposed was to amend the main motion to increase the contribution with an additional $15,000 funded through the accumulated reserve fund. And so, my apologies. So the main motion, when a main motion is put on the table, it remains live as we amend it through numerous layers. And we vote on each amendment individually. And then at the end, we then take the main motion, we add all of the amendments to it, and that's the main motion as amended.
So Ms. Williams, just to be clear here, then our main motion now that we're about to vote on, just to really, I think you've said it, but if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you just to say it one more time so we're all on the same page. Would you mind please just reading the motion that's on the table now that we're about to vote on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the main motion as amended, and at the end of this, I'll give you an option to perhaps not vote on it as one complete motion, but the main motion as amended is that $60,000 be contributed to the District of Saanich for said project, funded with $10,000 from the grant and aid budget and $50,000 from the events budget, and that an additional $15,000 be added to the contribution and funded through the accumulated surplus reserve funds. If council is open and willing, you could sever each of those and vote on them independently. But typically you would only do that when they're coming forward as one recommendation from a committee. This is a multi-layered motion at this point, but I do believe you could sever even the last piece off and vote separately.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. That gives us some options. So let me just hear from the councillors so we can make a decision how to go forward on this. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was very specific with the wording of the amendment that I made, which was, and further that we add, the $15,000 to the total, which would potentially, and on a point of procedure hopefully with the advice from staff, that would allow the chair to divide the question, which would allow then it to be voted on the two pieces to be voted on separately. I presume, but assuming staff would confirm that.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I'm just going to verify that observation with staff, okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just confirming that absolutely, as Councillor Zelka has laid that out, that is an option that's available. So what we can do is we can take the main motion with the initial amendment, which is the $60,000 contribution and the two designated funding bodies, vote on that, and then vote separately on the additional $15,000.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams. And Councillor Braithwaite, that sounds like that would work for you as well, too.
I think that if council would allow that, I would really appreciate that, because I would really like to show my support for the 60,000. So that would be very nice. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so now, okay, one more question. Sorry, Council, just one sec. I have to ask staff. So do we need a new motion to be able to separate them? So is that how we would proceed now?
Divide the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, you have the ability to sever the question before us. So if you would like to call a vote on the main motion as amended to include the two funding sources, so that's the $60,000 question. If you would like to call the vote on that, you have the ability to do that. And once that has been disposed of, you could then move to the next one, which is the $15,000 question.
Okay, so Council, let's split it up, and we're going to vote right now on the 60,000 from the two funding sources. Okay, are there any questions about that part of the motion? Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay. So, and then on the second part, the 15,000 as an additional source, is there any further discussion about that? Given there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Okay. Well, that wasn't so bad, was it? Sheesh. Okay.
Well done, Chair.
Thank you very much, staff, for Ms. Williams, for helping us out on that. Okay, where are we here? What time is it anyways? Okay, here we are. We're still okay time-wise, and we're on to now number 10, bylaws and permits, number 10.1. So we have Mr. Weber, the planning technician, is going to present the report and respond to questions on the ADP 00137. Mr. Weber, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ney. The District of Oak Bay is in receipt of an upland siting and design application and development variance permit application for renovations to an existing single-family home at 3170 Beach Drive. The subject property is located on the west side of Beach Drive between Lansdowne Road and Rutland Road. It is approximately 2,226 meters squared in area. Is surrounded by single-family homes on all sides, and it has a RS2 zoning designation and Uplands OCP designation. The proposal involves constructing 3 separate additions to the existing 1922 residence, as well as constructing a new pool house and in-ground pool in the rear yard of the subject property. The character of the proposed addition and pool house are in keeping with the European styling of the existing residence with other early 20th century homes in the Uplands neighborhood. And all materials and finishes proposed to be used are to match those used on the existing residence, ensuring the original style of the home is preserved. A total of 4 variances to the zoning bylaw are being requested as part of the proposed renovations, including a relaxation of the required minimum interior side lot line setback from 4.57 meters to 1.78 meters, which is required for the construction of the storage room addition, as well as the addition to the existing garage on the north side of the residence, and a relaxation of the maximum required building height from 7.32 meters to 7.98 meters, the maximum required occupiable height from 4.57 meters to 4.94 meters, and the maximum required roof height from 9.14 meters to 10.73 meters is required for the construction of an addition to the south side of the residence, which provides more interior living space. 2 trees are proposed to be removed as part of the proposal, including a Douglas fir and magnolia tree. However, the majority of existing trees and shrubs on the property will be maintained, and a total of 9 new trees are proposed to be planted, including a Japanese snowbell, paperbark maple, and katsura trees, resulting in estimated canopy coverage of 46%, meeting the required 45% canopy coverage target for this zone. The application was reviewed at the July Advisory Design Panel meeting, and the panel noted that the design is appropriate. However, in discussing the variance request, the panel expressed their objection to the interior side yard encroachment, advising that they did not feel that there was a compelling reason for it. Ultimately, they recommended that the upland siting design application be recommended to council for approval as presented, and that the development variance permit application be recommended for council for approval with the exception of the north interior side lot line setback variance requests. And as the subject property is within an area designated as the uplands within the district's official created plan, staff additionally reviewed the proposal for conformance with the upland siting and design guidelines. Staff determined that overall the proposed alterations to the single family home in the subject property will complement the design of the existing 1922 home, and the building and site design generally conform to the uplands housing policies within the official community plan, as well as the uplands design guidelines. Staff further determined that the impact of the proposal on adjacent properties in the street is minimized by the retention of mature trees and shrubs throughout the site, providing screening and mitigating privacy issues. Therefore, staff consider the proposed development to be supportable. Should council wish to move forward with authorizing the development variance permit, notification to adjacent property owners would be undertaken in accordance with the Oak Bay Land Use Procedures bylaw, and staff are requesting council direction on this application. And I believe the builder, Cindy Scott, is in attendance tonight to answer any questions council may have for them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. So to council, this obviously won't go out to public input. So these are questions that you may have, and we'll be looking to receive the report and giving notice here if council is so will. So are there any questions of council to staff? Councillor Appleton and then Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect, I note, just with respect to tree removals, I noticed that the significant size fir in this development is slated to be removed, as I understand it, because its root system is going to conflict with where the in-ground pool is proposed to be. And I'm just wondering whether there was any thought or effort being put into readjusting the footprint of that pool or the location of that pool in order that that tree can be retained. Thank you.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We'll go back to, is that Ms. Jensen? That sounds like Ms. Jensen's going to respond to that question. Is that right? Nope. Okay, I'll send it back to Mr. Weber. And I do know the Director of Planning as well as Ms. Jensen are here. So I'm not sure who would like to respond to that. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Weber.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe the applicant actually was about to speak to that question. She might be able to shed some light on this.
Of course, we've got the applicant here. Just a sec.
Yes, Cindy Scott is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you did say that. I apologize. Yeah. Yeah. So, Ms. Scott, if you'd like to respond to that.
Hi there. Are you able to hear me? I don't have great Wi-Fi, so
yeah.
Okay, great. So in regards to that, what we're trying to maintain is the existing mature landscaping. And so in order to do that, there's a patch of grass that's open and it's the ideal place. So working with the arborist and Rob Spitz, the designer, this is what has been created to minimize the impact on the existing landscape.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton, did you have further questions?
Yeah, well, just to follow up on
question?
that, just and I may be seeing this wrong, and I appreciate where that's coming from. When I review just sort of the existing tree layout and the existing landscape that's on the property, I don't see anything to the north of that tree that would bring the pool into conflict with anything should it be moved to the north and outside of the root zone of that fir. So I don't see an immediate landscape or an immediate conflict with anything else if that pool is moved. So can we clarify on that?
I will tell you, I got notification of this meeting Friday afternoon, and I'm on holidays, as well as we were initially told that the meeting was September 27th. So I actually don't have in front of me all the design plans to speak on that. I'm on holidays, hence the not great Wi-Fi, and my designer's on holidays as well, but I wanted to be present for this meeting. What I would say is that the landscape designer, Rob Spitz, and the arborist work together to minimize the effect on all existing landscape and the trees. In regards to the north side, I'm wondering if there's a mature formal garden. I'm not sure what you're looking at because I'm not able to have it in front of me because I'm not in my office. Where the pool house is, or?
We would be talking about the area to the, if you were viewing the pool house, it would be to the left of the pool house. So essentially it would be to the left-hand side of the pool as you view it from the house.
Okay, so the left-hand side of the rear yard.
That's right.
It's my understanding that, I guess then where would the pool house be located? I think that there's been a lot of like shadowing and light taken into consideration. I mean, ultimately, what the client here is trying to do is preserve the integrity of the existing building and also of the landscaping while adding additional living space and I guess improving the yard to their requirements, while trying to be respectful. Obviously very difficult because there is changes being made, but they've gone through considerable expense and thought hiring multiple professionals to kind of develop the best use of space.
I wonder, Councillor Appleton, I don't mean to interrupt. I wonder if staff, I understand the nature of the question, but I'm wondering if staff might be able to shed any insight onto the question for you, given the limitations of Ms. Scott at this point, given she hasn't got access to all the materials to answer the question. I don't know if that'll help, but it's up to you.
I suppose it doesn't do any harm to ask.
Okay, let's go back to staff and see if they can shed any light on the question. Do you want to repeat that, Mr. Weber? I'm not sure. Do you want the question repeated, or are you able to help Councillor Appleton understand what's going on there?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have, as part of any one types of these applications, we require that the applicant submit an arborist report. I don't have it open in front of me, but I do recall that the health of the particular Douglas fir tree in question was stated to either be fair or poor. I recall it wasn't stated to be in good health, so I think that may be part of the rationale for why this tree is being removed.
I thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the comments from Mr. Weber. I'm wondering whether he's referring to the developer's arborist or the municipal arborist. I'm just reviewing the municipal arborist's note memo attached to the staff report. It doesn't mention a health issue with the Douglas fir as far as I can tell, but it does, but that may be from the developer's arborist report, which was just not included here. But in any case, that's that. I think we've I think we've gone as far as we can with that, Madam Chair. So I'll yield the floor.
Okay, I'm just for final. I appreciate that, Councillor Appleton. I've just asked Mr. Weber. Is that true? There were two arborist reports, the developer and the municipalities, that may be in conflict.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What typically happens here is we ask the applicant to hire a consulting arborist and produce their own arborist report. And then staff, our district own Bones arborist will review that report as well as conduct a site inspection and then provide a memo kind of based on their review of both of those items. So I think if you were to look at the applicant's report, it's multiple pages long. It goes into great depth, whereas the municipal arborist report is generally just like a very brief summary. So it's quite possible that that detail was left out of the municipal arborist report.
Okay, and we don't have the developer's report here in our package.
No, typically those are not included with these application packages.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, Councillor Appleton? Right now? No? Okay, Councillor Zelka?
Thank you very much, Chair. I do note that the advisory panel had an issue with the development variance permit, but not with the upland siting and design. So a question through you to staff, what are we actually approving today or signing off on, and what will come back to council for further approvals? I'm assuming upland siting and design gets signed off today, and the development variance application permit, which is the one that apparently has a concern by the advisory panel, is to come back. Is that my understanding correct?
Okay, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my understanding. Perhaps I will leave it. Perhaps my manager, Deborah Jensen, may be able to speak to this and provide some additional information.
I could do that. And I also see Mr. Anderson's hand up. So I wonder if we go to let Mr. Anderson chime in here, given his hands up.
Thank you, Chair Ney. Yes, what council has before you is a consideration of whether or not to direct staff to give notice respecting the development variance permit. What we would do is then proceed with notice and bring back both the advisory design application as well as the variance application for council's consideration of approval at that time. So this is really asking for direction on whether or not to proceed with notice respecting the variance application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Does
and thank you. That's very helpful. So we don't need to make a final decision on either of these today. It sounds like, but other than to give authorization to provide notice, I certainly want to hear from the neighbors to see whether they have the same concern as, for example, the advisory panel has before voting for or against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I guess we're looking for a motion about receipt and to give notice. Councillor Zelka.
I'd like to move both recommendations, staff recommendations, as mentioned in the agenda, that we receive and that council give notice. Direct that staff gives notice. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Patterson seconded. Is there any further discussion? Going to call the question. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed. Okay. So we're going to move. Thank you very much to Mr. Weber, Mr. Anderson. Appreciate that. Let's move over to 10.2. So Ms. Jensen's going to present the report and respond to any questions on the DVP 00113. Welcome, Ms. Jensen.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ney. So this application is in front of council this evening for a proposed height variance for a fence that has been installed along the north property line. This is particularly adjacent to a play area at the Glen Lyon Norfolk School campus. The play area is part of a larger site layout that was approved by council through a heritage alteration permit for redevelopment of the school grounds. This was a few years ago. The fence has been installed to mitigate any potential for example, for stray sport balls leaving the property in this court area where the children have been using it, particularly for ball sports, basketball, and so on. So the fence itself is set along the property line. It consists of black meshing above a wooden fence. The requested variance would recognize the height of the installed fence at 6 meters, where the screens and fences bylaw sets a maximum fence height of 2 meters. The siting and height of the fence itself does have some impact on the views of some of the dwelling units that are located within the multifamily building located immediately to the north of the campus. The school has tried to minimize this impact by utilizing the black meshing material to soften the impact on the views. The fence itself does not run in a straight line. It does follow the angles of the play area. So in some areas, it's not immediately on the property line. So should council wish to move the application forward, staff would proceed with written notification of the development variance application to all properties within a 50-meter radius. This would include any rental properties or occupiers of rental properties within that radius. The proposal would then come back to a subsequent council meeting for consideration of any public input and a final resolution. So with that, staff are requested council direction as to the options and can entertain any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. So as with the previous application, the objective here is to receive the report and then to give notice. But prior to that, if council has questions, this would be the time to pose them regarding the application. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to staff. So can I confirm, and I should know this because I walked past the site many times, both before and after the renovation, but do I understand that there was a chain link fence the same height in that same location previously? Do I get that right? I think that's what the report states.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Chair. That is correct. There was a chain link fence in a very similar location as to what the current fence is. I don't believe it was quite as high as this one, but there definitely would have been a visual preference in that same area.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to staff. And just to confirm that the report makes mention, so this is going to be a notification for the variance, but the report does make mention that that neighbors were consulted probably by GNS at the time of installation. So is there any further information about what that consultation or that outreach looked like?
Ms. Jensen, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Councillor Appleton, I don't have any additional information on what that consultation process looked like other than what's in the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, it looks like Mr. Anderson has something to add. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I would mention that the applicants did indicate that they had met with some representatives of the apartment building next door, and that they had from the Strata Council, I believe, or from the property owner, my apologies, they had received support for what they were proposing, but that was basically an outcome of a meeting with the property owner specifically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Are there any other questions from council? Councillor Zelka.
I was going to move the staff recommendation, but I'll let Councillor Green speak first.
Okay. Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to my colleague, Councillor Zelka. Just very quickly, in response to Mr. Anderson's indication that GNS met only with the owner of the building as opposed to individual either tenants or owners that actually live in the building and will be looking at this fence. I'm just concerned that we don't have, the full picture in terms of neighborhood or neighbor consultation. Is that something? I don't want to necessarily hold up this application, but on the other hand, I am very curious as to know how the people on that side of the building feel about this fence. So that's just my only concern.
So the
Thank you.
question, Councillor Green, to staff is the notice going out to not just the property manager or the owner of the property as your, but also to the residents of the
Yes.
property. Is okay.
Yeah, that would be great if it's possible. Thank you.
So let's see, I thought Mr. Anderson had his hand up, but it disappeared on my screen. So I'm going to just go back then to Mr. Weber to respond to that unless I see, I can't, unless Ms. Jensen speaks to this. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll go back to Ms. Jensen or Mr. Anderson to respond to Councillor Green's question.
Thank you, Chair Nate. Yes, the notification process would be to all properties within 50 meters of the school, and that would include either property owners or tenants, occupiers within that area. So if any of the residents in that building had any further comment, that would be their opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Green, on that? Did that?
And just to clarify again, then, so that notice would go to the property owner and the tenants, correct? I thought I heard Ms. Jensen say and or property owner or tenants, but I'm assuming it's and. Thank you.
I'll let you confirm that, Ms. Jensen.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Braithwaite, or any further questions, Councillor Green?
No, thank you very much.
Okay,
and thanks to Ms. Jensen too.
Sure. Councillor Braithwaite.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, the fence is already up. Is that not correct?
Ms. Jensen?
That is correct.
Right. So so really the residents are already looking at it, so they should know exactly what it's going to look like. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that it was up already. So it's really asking for forgiveness rather than permission to put it up.
Do you want to respond to that, Ms. Jensen?
Just to clarify that is correct. The fence has been sited around that play area already. So the notification that will go out to the properties within that 15-meter radius, we usually do include a site plan so that that sets out where the location of the fence would be. But yes, I would anticipate that anybody, especially within immediate radius of that fence, will know exactly where it is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. I'd like to move staff recommendation that the report be received and that council direct that the notice be given of this DVP.
Moved by Councillor Zelka, second by Councillor Appleton. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay, it sounds like Ms. Jensen, thank you very much for being here. You sound croaky. I hope that's not COVID, but in any case, I hope you're feeling better soon on that one. Okay, so moving right along, item 10.4. Mr. Weber is going to present the report on ADP 00135 at 2780 Beach Drive. Welcome again, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Chair Nate. The District of Oak Bay is in receipt of a development variance permit application to allow for the construction of an addition to the existing residence at 1742 Elgin Road. The 589 meter square property is located on the west side of Elgin Road between Milton Street and Byron Street. It is surrounded by single family homes to the north, south, west, and St. Mary's Anglican Church to the east. It has a RS5 zoning designation and a established neighborhoods OZP designation. The proposal would permit the construction of a 12.1 meter squared single-story addition to the east side of the existing single-family dwelling on the subject property, which is proposed to be built to match the finish and architectural style of the existing 1951 residence. The siting of the proposed addition would require a variance of two regulations within the zoning bylaw, a relaxation of the minimum required interior side lot line setback from 3.65 meters to 2.44 meters, and a relaxation of the minimum required total side lot line setback from 4.57 meters to 3.82 meters. No trees are requested to be removed as part of the proposed development, and the existing 66.5% canopy coverage exceeds the required 35% canopy coverage target for the zone. So no additional trees are proposed to be planted. Staff reviewed the proposal and determined that it generally meets the policy direction of the official community plan by allowing for the adaptive reuse of existing housing stock, and that the location of the subject property on a street corner combined with the siting of the proposed addition towards the center of the lot and the existing vegetation screening will minimize the impact of the addition to neighboring properties. And therefore, staff consider the proposed developments to be supportable. As with the last application, should council wish to move forward with authorizing the development variance permit, notification to adjacent property owners would be undertaken in accordance with the Oak Bay Land Use Procedures bylaw, and staff are requesting council direction on this application. And I believe James Keith is in attendance tonight. He's the applicant and available to answer any specific questions you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. I also introduced this as 10-4 and it's 10-3, and it's for the 1742 Elgin Street property with Mr. Weber clarified. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So who is it who's here right now? It's who was it, Mr. Weber? Who's in attendance right now?
Yes, that'd be James Keith.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so back to council. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing. Oh, Councillor Braithwaite.
Actually, I don't have a question. I was just going to make a comment, just to thank the applicant for not ripping the house down and to just making an addition. And I'd be very happy to move the that the report be received and that council direct notice be given.
Moved by Councillor Braithwaite, second by Councillor Green. Any further discussion? Seeing Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to hearing back from the local neighbors to see what they think. You know, being its location, I think it's quite reasonable to go to the next step and then just see what the public has to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to, if there's any further discussion, I'll ask. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Keith, for showing up, and thank you very much again, Mr. Weber, for the clear presentation of the report. On to 10-4, where we will have a decision to make, not just to give a notice. So Mr. Weber will present this report and respond to any questions, and on 2780 Beach Drive. Welcome again, Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ney. The District of Oak Bay is in receipt of an upland siting and design application to construct a new single-family home at 2780 Beach Drive. The subject property is located on the northwest side of Beach Drive at the intersection of Beach Drive and Dorset Road, is approximately 1,951 meters squared in area, is surrounded by single-family homes on all sides, and has a RS2 zoning designation and Uplands OCP designation. The proposal involves demolishing the existing 1951 residence on the subject property and constructing a new contemporary style two-story single-family home in a similar location, which prominently features a gable shingle roof and vertical cedar siding and trim. One protected European hawthorn tree is proposed to be removed, and a total of 22 new trees are proposed to be planted, primarily Gary oaks, as well as a Japanese flowering cherry and wild plum, resulting in an estimated canopy coverage of 55%, exceeding the required 45% canopy coverage target. The application was reviewed at the July Advisory Design Panel meeting, and the panel considered and discussed various design elements such as the integration of the building and landscape, sensitive use of materials, attention to sustainable details, and the interpretation of the park-like setting referencing natural elements and creating a connection to Uplands Park. The panel also commented that the applicant commended the applicant on an exemplary design and recommended that council consider the approval of the proposal as presented. As the subject property is within an area designated as the Uplands within district's official community plan, staff further review the proposal for conformance with the Uplands Siting and Design Guidelines. Staff determined that the proposal is not anticipated to have a significant impacts on views, shadowing, or overlook or privacy of neighboring properties, and work with the applicant to ensure no variances were requested or required as part of the proposal. A variety of native and ornamental grasses, flowers, shrubs, and trees are proposed to be planted throughout a significant portion of the open space of the property, establishing a natural park-like setting similar to the nearby Uplands Park, and therefore staff consider the proposal to be supportable and ready for council consideration. And staff are requesting council direction on this application. And I believe Josh Harvey, the applicant, is in attendance tonight to answer any questions council has.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. So council, questions, staff let's start with staff. And if you have questions for the applicant, we can follow up with that. No questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we're looking for a motion. Councillor Appleton.
I would move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councillor Appleton, second by Councillor Patterson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion moved. Thank you. Okay, so that's approved. Moving right along here, item 10.5 for 2021 Brighton Avenue. We have a siting and design application. Mr. Weber again will present this application and respond to any council questions. Mr. Weber.
All right, thank you, Chair Renee. The District Oak Bay is in receipt of a siting and design application for the construction of a new single-family home at 2021 Brighton Avenue. The property is located on the south side of Brighton Avenue between Falbury Road and Mitchell Street, is approximately 685 meters squared in area, is surrounded by single-family homes on all sides, and has an RS5 zoning designation and established neighborhoods OCP designation. The property is presently a vacant lot resulting from subdivision in 2012, which created two properties, the subject property as well as the neighboring 2031 Brighton Avenue property. The application is before council as part of the subdivision application. A siting and design covenant was registered on the title of the property, which established that the siting, architectural design, and exterior finish of any building or structure constructed on the property is subject to the approval of the District of Oak Bay. The proposed two-story residence conforms with the setback requirements within the zoning bylaw and is built to be a mix of traditional and modern styles and finishes, and predominantly features a mix of board and batten cementitious panel siding and combination hip and gable shingle roof. No bylaw protected trees were proposed to be removed as part of the development, and the applicant is proposing to plant a magnolia tree, which will increase the existing canopy coverage from 33.5% to 35.6%, slightly over the canopy cover required by the tree preservation bylaw for this zone. The application was reviewed at the July Advisory Design Panel meeting, and the panel noted that the neutral design provides an interesting blend of traditional lines with more updated features and works suitably within the neighborhood. Additionally, the panel noted that the design meets the minimum design standards and recommended that council consider the approval of the proposal as presented. Staff further reviewed the proposal and noted that the setting and design of the proposed residence is in keeping with the housing policies within the official community plan, as well as the regulations within the zoning bylaw. Therefore, staff consider the proposal to be supportable and ready for council's consideration, and staff are requesting council direction on this application. And I believe the applicant, Russ Collins, is in attendance tonight to answer any council questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber, for a very clear overview of the report. So back to council. So we're looking for a recommendation to approve or not the application. I think I saw Appleton, Braithwaite, and then Zelka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a bit of a procedural question. I think that are for staff. I just noticed that the recommendations actually make reference to an upland siting and design. and that these are upland siting and design applications, but these are not in the uplands. And I know the vast majority of siting and design things that we deal with are from uplands, but I understand that these siting and design standards were brought about by a covenant for that purpose. So I think I get the point, but because the language is in the recommendation, I guess I would say when it comes time to move the motion, perhaps it might be best for clarity to omit the uplands portion of those recommendations. Maybe staff could comment on that.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My understanding, this is actually just a typo and that uplands is not supposed to be in there. And yeah, we will remove it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the observation. Councillor Appleton, did you have any other questions or? Okay, good. Sorry, Councillor, who did I say? Braithwaite, Zelka? I can't remember. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. I'm wondering, I couldn't tell how wide this lot and the one coming up behind it is. Is it a 50 by 125 lot or is it smaller than that? Because I couldn't tell from the drawings. Sorry. So if I could just ask that to staff.
Okay, Mr. Weber, do you have the dimensions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm just bringing it up right now. It appears to be 16.42 meters wide by 41.72 meters deep.
And in real language, that would be about
feet and inches?
60, 70 feet wide by?
It appears to be approximately 54 feet wide by
100
yeah, about 137 feet deep.
Okay, thank you. And another question, and perhaps I'm not sure which staff, if I may, Chair, I'm not sure which staff person could answer this, but I noticed in the report that Chair King was opposed to this. And do we have any indication why he was opposed to this application?
Mr. Weber?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I can't recall if anything specifically was stated in the minutes, but during the meeting, he did reference the design. He thought design was somewhat conventional, is my recall of it.
Okay. I mean, this and this perhaps will go to Mr. Collins. There's no basement in this design, Mr. Collins, for this particular house, it looks like. Is that correct?
Okay, we'll bring in Mr. Collins into this conversation. Hello, Mr. Collins.
Hello.
I think, he's off mute. Okay, hello.
Yeah, there's no basement proposed for this house. It's just a two-story building.
Right. So I mean, to me, it looks like you're underneath the site coverage, so you've left a little bit of room there for future expansion if you chose to. Same with the FAR. It's like a 2,800 square foot house with no basement. It looks pretty reasonable to me. So when the time comes, I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, my first question, by the way, through you, it will be to staff. The roadway abutting this, I guess let's call it a new property, for lack of a better word, talks about how roadside improvements to be coordinated per Oak Bay Engineering Department requirements. That area, if I remember correctly, has a bit of an urban, a rural feel to, excuse me, and the roadway, if I remember correctly, it was rather in bad shape. Is this going to look like a brand new highway, or what is the plan to keep the ambiance of the area relatively stable from Oak Bay's perspective?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I see Mr. Anderson has got his hand up, so I'm going to let him respond.
Thank you, Chair Ney. Yes, staff, particularly engineering and planning, have been working with the applicants regarding the road improvements that would be put in place at the building permit stage. And I can confirm that we are looking at trying to ensure we have more modest design and treatment for the road, protecting trees where we can. And that's something that we're working with the applicants on, and we'll achieve that through the building permit process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
And thank you, Chair. I'm very, very pleased to hear that it's more on the modest side as opposed to following the letter of the law, which usually involves a lot of concrete and sometimes a few bulldozers. Especially in that particular area as it transitions over onto, I believe it's Victoria, just a stone's throw away. And I do see pathways and those sorts of things nearby. So I tend to agree with some of the comments made earlier. It's rather a simple design, and I presume the next property that comes forward for the house, for the property next door, which would also be subject to siting and design, if I remember correctly, it has to be a different approach. I just wanted to confirm, well, what is the assumption for the building that will be next to this one, if it's not already there?
Well, I think we've got this on as the next item, Councillor.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But I will let Mr. Anderson respond. He's got his hand up if he wants to comment.
Yeah, as pointed out, this is not in the uplands, and so the regulation regarding similar within the 500-foot distance does not apply in this context. Thank you, Chair.
All right, I appreciate that. So if we want something that does not apply, it's something we would have to enforce ourselves here at this table. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zelka. Are there any further discussions? Okay, if there's no further discussion, Councillor Braithwaite, you were.
Yeah, I can make the motion to receive the reports.
And approve? Do you want to do them together?
Sure, we can do them both
or
and
separate
approve,
them? Okay.
and approve the 2021 Brighton Avenue.
Okay, application. Okay, great. Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Seconded by Councillor Zelka. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, one more land use application, 10.6 at 2031 Brighton, adjacent to the previous one. Mr. Weber, welcome again.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The District of Oak Bay is in receipt of a siting and design application for the construction of a new single-family home at 2031 Brighton Avenue. The property is located on the south side of Brighton Avenue between Foul Bay Road and Mitchell Street, is approximately 685 meters squared in area, is surrounded by single-family homes on all sides, and it has an RS5 zoning designation and established neighborhoods OCP designation. The property is presently a vacant lot, similar to the previous application, resulting from a 2012 subdivision that created two properties, the subject property, as well as the neighboring 2021 Brighton Avenue property. The application is before council as part of a condition on the subdivision of the property in which the siting and design covenant was registered on title for the property, which establishes that the siting, architectural design, and exterior finish of any building on this or structure constructed on the property is subject to approval by the District of Oak Bay. The proposed residence is proposed to be built in a Georgian style and includes a detached garage in the rear yard built in a similar architectural style as the residence, as well as an in-ground swimming pool. The primary cladding materials on the residence is a mix of brick and stucco, and both the residence and accessory building featured a mansard roof. No bylaw protected trees are proposed to be removed as part of the development, and the applicant is proposing to plant one Gary oak tree, which will increase the existing canopy cover from 17% to 35%, meeting the target required by the tree preservation bylaw. The application was reviewed at the July advisory design panel, and the panel noted that the design meets the minimum standards and siting is consistent with the adjacent properties. Additionally, the panel noted that the diversity of design should include basic houses and recommended that council consider the approval of the proposal as presented. Staff further reviewed the proposal and noted that the siting and design of the residence is in keeping with the housing policies within the official community plan, as well as the regulations within the zoning bylaw. And therefore, staff considered the proposal to be supportable and ready for council consideration. Staff are requesting council direction on this application, and I believe the applicant, Justin Hamer, is in attendance tonight to answer council's questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mr. Weber. So to Council Braithwaite.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions for staff and then probably a question for the applicant. Again, this is the same size lot as the one next door to it. So it would be 54 by about 137, I'm assuming, yes?
To staff for verification. Mr. Weber, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just reviewing it, I believe. Yeah, it appears to be quite similar, 16.44 meters by 41.75 meters.
Thank you so much. And then I did look, and I'm sorry I couldn't see it on the plans, but could you please tell me what the FAR and the site coverage are for this property? Because I looked everywhere, and I really wished it was more apparent on some of these plans because I couldn't see it anywhere. So maybe I just missed it, but I could not see it.
Mr. Weber?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just bringing up the plans here. And the applicant may be able to provide these numbers as well. They may have them on hand.
The reason I'm asking is because this house seems so much bigger in square footage than the one prior. And so I'm very interested to know if it's gone to the maximum for FAR and for site coverage. But again, I would like to, it would be nice if that was really apparent so we didn't have to go searching for it on the plans.
Yes, I'm seem to having trouble finding those numbers myself. Perhaps the applicant would be able to provide those numbers for you.
Okay, so can we go over to the applicant? Is the applicant here?
Hear me?
Mr. Hammer?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, hi.
How are you?
You have pretty well, yeah.
So you're looking for the allowable FSR?
No, I
versus
know
the
I know what the allowable is. I'm wondering what your FAR is and what your site coverage is.
So coverage, I've got proposed is 20.6% for the house. Pool is 4.9, which gives a total of 25.5%. Allowable is 30%.
Right. Okay. And I guess since I have you, I'm going to ask, when I look at the plans, I noticed that it has 6 bedrooms, but I can't find bedroom number 4. So can you tell me where bedroom number 4 is? Because I don't see it anywhere. So is there only 5 bedrooms in this house or is there 6?
Yeah, so there's a master and 2 bedrooms upstairs on the top floor.
Yeah.
And then
in the basement,
there's an office, which maybe is considered. And then the basement does have bedroom, 2 bedrooms downstairs.
Okay, so the office could be considered a different bedroom. And the only reason
Possibly,
yeah. The only reason I ask, and this is probably a question to staff, is that based on our meeting last week, when we found out from the parking bylaw that anything more than 4 sleeping rooms in a house has to have another additional parking spot. So and then usually the houses that we see that have that many bedrooms are in the upland, so it's not really an issue. So I'm just wondering through the staff if that's an issue for this property based on our parking bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Braithwaite, we'll ask that of Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly within the driveway, there is sufficient room for, I guess, on-site parking. It wouldn't be covered, but the length of the driveway would certainly allow for multiple parking spaces in tandem.
Thank you. No, I have no further questions.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Braithwaite. Any other, Councillor Zelka?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. I do note that the basement, it's a full basement, same floor area as or floor space as the first floor and second floor. How deep, if I could ask, I couldn't quite figure out from the dark drawings, how deep, how much blasting, those sort of, questions, since I understand there's a fair bit of rock in this area.
Yeah, so let's go to Mr. Weber.
Yeah, perhaps that one would be best to refer to the applicant as well.
Okay,
They
we'll
might be
go.
more familiar with the site.
Okay, Mr. Weber. So let's go to Mr. Hammer.
Okay, so it's.
Oh, Mr. Hammer, can I
Hello.
interrupt you?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I think we're going to need an extension for this meeting. So could I get a motion to extend the meeting? Would 10:15 make it work here? We're on the second to last item here. So, okay, Councillor Braithwaite till 10:15. Can I seconder? Councillor Patterson, call the question, all in favor? Opposed, none opposed, none opposed, right? Okay, good. So we've extended that to 10:15. I'm sorry, Mr. Hammer, for interrupting you. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. I appreciate you extending the meeting and not cutting it short here. I have been on site and it's certainly noticeable that there is some rock that will need to be removed. As you get onto the lot itself, it does kind of slope down and it does kind of turn to pasture. So until we start excavating, we won't know the full extent of how much blasting is required. But we certainly do see some rock exposed kind of where the road and entry to that property is.
Does that answer that, Councillor Falconer?
Yes, it does. Thank you. That's enough.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, council? Okay, let's looking for a motion. There's a receipt and an approval that we're looking for.
I'll move. Go ahead.
Councillor Appleton.
I will move the receipt of the report and the staff recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Appleton and a second. Councillor Braithwaite, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Hammer, and thank you very much, Mr. Weber. There were a lot of reports there, and it's clear that, the reports come up relatively short, but it's clear there's been an awful lot of work that's gone on here to get to this point. So thank you very much, Mr. Weber, and good night, Mr. Hammer, as well. So we're moving into the last item here, and it's an item to which I will need to recuse myself because I am an employee at the University of Victoria, where the application derives. And so I'm going to pass the meeting over to Councillor Appleton, who will chair this part of the meeting and then bring the meeting to a close and adjournment. So with that, good night, everybody. I'm going to sign out so that this can be done out of my presence.
Thank you, Councillor Ney. I'll wait until you depart. See that Councillor Ney is almost offline. We'll just give her 1 second here. Okay, so there we go. So assuming the chair, thank you, everyone. We'll try to expedite here. We're moving on to item 11.1 on the agenda. This is an item subject to public input, so I will ask that staff, thank you very much. We'll put up the numbers for public input. So members of the public, if you are watching, this is an item that is subject to public input, and you can phone in at the numbers that are included here in order to provide your input. This is for development permit 00106 for 3800 Finnerty Road, the UVic campus. This was previously sent out for notification of variance by council and is now returned. So I guess I am handing it over to Ms. Jensen to introduce this item.
Thank you. Council saw this application at their July 12th meeting, which is a proposal to undertake an expansion of the engineering building that includes an addition to the existing building and construction of a new high bay research lab. The proposed works require council consideration for variances to parking and to building height. And to the building height, that would be for both of the buildings. So at the July 12th meeting, council directed that staff give notice of its intent to consider the development variance permit application for approval. Notice was mailed out to 48 property owners within a 50-meter radius on June 14th. We did receive one piece of correspondence, and that is attached to council's agenda this evening. And the application is now in front of council for consideration of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen, for that. I will seek public input here in time. I'll give folks a little bit of time to call in. In the meantime, we'll look for questions from council to staff or the applicant. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very much looking forward to supporting this proposal, this development. But I do have one quick question about I guess lab exhaust ports or chimneys or whatever we refer to those as. Is there a sound? How do I say? Will any neighbors nearby or any buildings nearby be able to hear sound coming out of those vents from the labs? And if so, approximately, is there any sound concerns that we need to consider here?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Ms. Jensen, perhaps I'm directing that to the applicant.
Thank you to the chair. Yes, we do have Mike Wilson in attendance this evening from the University of Victoria who could answer some of those specifications. I would also note, though, that any construction would ultimately, any sound producing emissions would have to meet some of our other bylaws, but perhaps Mr. Wilson can give you some additional information.
Mr. Wilson, welcome to the meeting. Did you have anything you wish to add to that?
Good evening, Council. Just in general, all of our laboratory buildings for health and safety are required to have exhaust fans. We have members of our design team here, and I'm going to ask perhaps if Mr. Mateos from Dialogue, our architecture firm, could perhaps provide some details as to the specifications for the exhaust.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mateos. Welcome to the meeting. If you'd like to add anything.
Yes, good evening. Thanks for inviting me here. I just would add that these are very sophisticated, high velocity lab exhaust fans. There are numerous already in a lot of the more modern lab buildings at UVic, and they are already accounting for acoustic properties, so they won't be very noisy, and they are the way that they're constructed is designed to reduce noise. So I don't think that would be a concern, even for the buildings right around the new proposed buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mateos.
Thank you, Chair. I would tend to agree, and I appreciate the architect and designer making those comments, and I rest assured. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Do we have any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I would be prepared to make a motion if you would entertain one.
Motions are always in order.
Okay, thank you. I will move the option 1 of the staff recommendation that the development variance permit to undertake construction of the engineering and computer science facilities at the University of Victoria located at 3800 Finnerty Road be approved.
I'll second, and then I'm pretty sure you want to go to the public, Councillor Appleton. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. The motion is moved and seconded, and I will, thank you very much. I will now pause to give the public an opportunity to call in and provide their input. I'm not seeing anybody on the list. Ms. Williams, are you aware of anybody that has tried to contact us that I'm missing?
Thank you, Chair Appleton. Nobody has called in at this time.
Very good. Well, then we have a motion on the table. I guess I will maybe just give it another couple of seconds for people to phone in, being equitable and giving people the best chance that we can. It has gotten awfully late, and I do appreciate the proponents' patience as we work through the agenda. Seeing no other members of the public, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then I would call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillor Green.
Move adjournment.
Oh.
Oh, no.
You're on mute, Councillor Green. Are you moving adjournment? No.
Councillor Zelka says no.
Councillor
I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was trying to lower my hand. I apologize.
Very good. We'll be back in person in a couple of months, and this will be much easier. Councillor Zelka.
A point of procedure, please. I understand we just simply received, but we have not actually approved the DVP yet. I just want to confirm that through staff.
Through you, Councillor Zelka, the motion that was moved, seconded, and voted on was to approve the application. There was no motion to receive the report.
Thank you. When I heard Councillor Green read it, I heard the word received at the end. I didn't hear the word approved, but that's fine.
Just for completeness sake, maybe I could seek a motion to receive the report as well, please. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Braithwaite. Any discussion on that motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you, Councillor Zelka. So I will seek a motion to adjourn. Councillor Braithwaite, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, council and staff, and to the applicants for staying to the end. And we are officially on our summer break. So I hope everybody enjoys their summer, and we'll look forward to seeing you around the district, and we'll see you again around this table in September. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good August.
Good night, all.